You're not stuck because you're lazy. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because something far deeper is looping your reality over and over, from a place so hidden most people never find it. This isn't about motivation hacks. This isn't about surface-level affirmations. This is about why your life, no matter how hard you try to change it, keeps snapping back like a cosmic rubber band to the same fears, the same patterns, the same limitations. It's happening inside something more powerful than your willpower, more dominant than your habits, more influential than your conscious decisions. It's happening inside your quantum mind. Yes, the mind that exists beyond your biology, beyond your personal history, and even beyond what you call thought. It's the subtle, energetic intelligence constantly creating your reality behind the scenes. And here's the truth nobody tells you. Your quantum mind isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do, but the very mechanism meant to help you evolve can just as easily lock you into cycles that feel impossible to break. This series isn't just about understanding that, it's about breaking it. Over the next 4 hours, you'll uncover a truth so few ever grasp. You are living inside a feedback loop, and that loop isn't just mental. It's quantum, it's energetic, it's emotional, and it's encoded into the very fabric of how you perceive reality itself. We're going to expose the invisible architecture of your stuckness. We're going to challenge the myths you've believed about change. And then, step by step, we're going to dismantle the internal prison built by your past, reinforced by your thoughts, and powered by the frequency you emit every single day. This isn't theory. This is physics, psychology, and consciousness, merged into transformation at the deepest level possible. You'll learn how your reality collapses around your expectations. You'll learn how your memories distort your present. You'll learn why effort is useless when energy is misaligned, and how to finally align with the version of yourself that already lives in the future you've been trying to reach. Each chapter will build on the last. Each concept will unlock the next layer of self-mastery. And each realization will pull you further from the illusion of stuckness and closer to a new level of power most people never tap into. This is not self-help. This is self-reconstruction. At the level where matter, mind, and energy meet. It starts now, not with a tip or trick, but with a revelation. You're more stuck than you realize. And it's not your fault. But staying stuck, that is your responsibility to change. So let's begin. You probably think your thoughts are your own. You assume that because you're thinking about change, you're already shifting your life. But here's the problem. You're trying to rewire the house. From inside the same locked room, the door is open, but you've forgotten it exists. That's what this chapter is about. Because the truth is, your most repetitive thoughts, the ones you lean on for clarity, motivation, or even reflection, are often the very mechanisms that keep you in stasis. They don't just describe your world. They reinforce it. They encode it. They recollapse the same version of reality day after day. This isn't just about negative thinking or limiting beliefs. It's about something more elusive. How your sense of self becomes a containment field. Here's how it works. Your brain is designed to seek familiarity. It doesn't want to find truth, it wants to find consistency. And your identity, the story you tell yourself about who you are, acts like a magnet, pulling in experiences, interpretations, and behaviors that match that story. Even when the story is painful, even when it's keeping you small, even when it's no longer true, that magnet becomes your default frequency. And your frequency broadcasts silently, attracting and collapsing reality to fit the pattern you've unconsciously chosen. Over time, that pattern becomes your comfort zone, not because it's safe, but because it's predictable. Predictability feels like security to the nervous system, even when the cost is your potential. Now let's make it more real. Let's say you want to break through a fear. You begin thinking positively. You write goals. You say affirmations. But underneath all of that, your internal frequency is still vibrating from the old story. I'm not enough. I always fail. I never finish what I start. This is just who I am. And so, even as you say you want freedom, your mind, with quantum precision, begins looking for ways to return to the familiar. It resists risk. It rationalizes avoidance. It reshapes your perception to protect the identity you're still clinging to. And here's where it gets brutal. The more you try to change using the same thought structures that built the current version of you, the deeper the loop becomes. It's like trying to climb out of quicksand by building a staircase made of more quicksand. So what's the real issue here? You're not stuck because change is hard. You're stuck because you keep trying to change using the same identity-based thoughts that created the problem. You keep looping because you don't realize the loop isn't just in your behavior, it's in your field. And your field doesn't respond to what you want. It responds to what you are energetically, emotionally, and subconsciously. This is the invisible prison. You are collapsing the same version of your life over and over, not because you're broken, but because the system you're using to change is built on the exact same blueprint you're trying to escape. Let that land. Because until you change the signal, not just the thought but the state beneath it, you will continue to create the same experience, attract the same feedback, and confirm the same belief. That's the trap. Not a lack of effort, not a failure of intelligence, but a failure of alignment. So if you feel like no matter what you try, your world keeps dragging you back to square one, it's not in your head. It's in your field. Your thoughts are looping. Your identity is locked. Your brain is scanning for evidence that nothing has changed. And it keeps finding it. But now you've seen the code. You've caught a glimpse of the program running the show. And that awareness, raw, uncomfortable, undeniable, is your first key. Next, we will go further into the quantum mind, not as a metaphor, but as the actual mechanism behind your self-perpetuating patterns. This is where you begin to see that your life isn't just happening inside your head. It's happening inside your field. And the architect, it's time to meet it. You've just seen the trap. The thoughts that loop you. The identity that contains you. The frequency that attracts more of what you wish you could escape. Now it's time to face the system behind it all. The invisible machine that's been running this entire operation. Your quantum mind. This isn't your surface-level brain. This isn't your logic or conscious awareness. This is the deeper field, the intersection of thought, emotion, frequency, and space that decides how your life collapses into physical form. You don't live in a static world. You live in a field of possibility, a swirling sea of probability that only becomes solid when your awareness focuses on it. And that focus, that energetic act of attention, is the trigger that turns waves into particles, possibility into limitation, dreams into predictable routines. That mechanism, it's not theoretical. It's the core behavior of the quantum mind. Your mind isn't just observing reality. It's generating it. Every interpretation you form, every emotion you allow, every frequency you carry through your body, all of that is data your quantum mind uses to finalize your world. It isn't just reacting to circumstances. It's helping create them. And that creation is fast. Thoughts aren't just silent narrators. They're commands. Every time you think, nothing ever works out, your quantum field locks in that frequency and responds with confirming patterns. Every time you feel disappointment but pretend to be positive, the real signal sent is still rooted in disappointment, and that's what the quantum field mirrors. This is why surface-level change fails. Because the conscious mind, the part of you setting goals and visualizing success, is barely a ripple on the surface of the quantum sea. The real signal is being sent from the deeper layers, subconscious beliefs, suppressed emotions, energetic coherence or lack of it. And unless those align with the outcome you want, the field responds with exactly what you truly are, not what you pretend to be. This is how your quantum mind traps you. Not by punishing you, not by working against you, but by mirroring exactly what you're feeding it. It's a flawless reflection system, not a motivational coach. If you're projecting fear, it reflects situations that confirm it. If you're radiating confidence, even quietly, it organizes reality to meet that frequency. If you're rooted in old wounds, it keeps offering experiences that scratch at them, not to hurt you, but to stay consistent with the signal you've emitted. So when you ask, why does this keep happening to me? The answer lies in what you're broadcasting, even when you're not speaking. This isn't mystical. It's mechanical. Just like a tuning fork can cause another to vibrate at the same pitch, your quantum mind generates a signature frequency. That frequency interacts with the field. The field reflects it back. And the kicker? Most of this is happening below your conscious awareness. You're not choosing your patterns on purpose. You're radiating them by default, because you've been trained to think change is about doing. But the quantum mind doesn't care what you do. It cares what you are. You can act like a winner. You can journal and affirm and plan. But if your field is still stuck in scarcity, it will continue collapsing timelines that reflect that. The quantum mind isn't personal. It's precise. So if you want to change the output, you have to change the input at the field level. And that starts with awareness. Not awareness of what you're doing wrong, but awareness of the source code, the internal programming emitting the instructions that shape your reality. Here's where it gets even more interesting. This field, your quantum signal, is entangled with everything. Your relationships, your body, your money, your time, because everything you experience is collapsed through your internal lens. And that lens is coded by your mind, not the part that thinks, the part that broadcasts. So if you've ever felt like you're walking in circles, if it seems like no matter what you fix, the same kinds of problems show up again and again, it's not because you're cursed. It's not because you're broken. It's because your quantum mind hasn't changed. And until it does, your field remains identical, even if your circumstances look slightly different. This is the difference between real transformation and temporary behavior shifts. Behavior can be faked. Energy can't. But the beauty is this. You can recondition the quantum mind. You can tune your signal deliberately. You can begin feeding the field a different frequency, not with force but with alignment. And once that alignment is consistent, the field stops reflecting your past and starts supporting your evolution. So the question isn't whether change is possible. The question is whether your signal has changed. Next, we will dismantle the biggest myth of all, that your brain works like a machine. Because it doesn't. It behaves like a collapsing wave of potential. And that realization will unlock a truth you've never considered. You've been conditioned to believe that your brain is a processor, that it inputs information, computes it, and outputs a decision, like a biological laptop running software. But that metaphor has kept you stuck in linear change, because the brain, and more importantly your mind, doesn't function like a machine. It functions like a field. It responds not only to logic, but to resonance. It operates not only on thoughts, but on frequencies. It collapses not just ideas, but entire versions of reality. This is what you were never taught. Your brain doesn't wait for the world to show you something so it can process it. It's constantly projecting meaning into the world, which then collapses back into perception. The observer effect in quantum physics doesn't just apply to subatomic particles. It applies to your daily experience. The moment you observe something, from your unique emotional state, beliefs, and past conditioning, you're already filtering it through a wave function. And that wave function collapses into a particle, the solid reality you then experience. Your reality isn't being served to you. You're participating in its construction. And the blueprint for that construction is encoded in your mind's current energetic configuration. This is where the model of a computer brain collapses. Computers respond to input with fixed programs. But your brain reshapes itself, physically, in real time, based on what you pay attention to and how you feel while doing it. It is neuroplastic. It reconfigures its pathways based on signal strength. And what gives a signal strength? Emotion, repetition, resonance. Let's break that down. If you feel strong fear while thinking about money, your brain wires that fear into your financial perception. If you feel deep excitement when envisioning creative expression, your brain wires that excitement into those patterns. That wiring, that neurochemical architecture, becomes the system that shapes how your mind collapses potential into experience. You're not a computer reacting to code. You're a field collapsing waves into matter. But there's a catch. If you keep feeding the field the same signal, it keeps collapsing the same version of the universe over and over. That's why you experience the same emotional patterns with different people. That's why your goals change but the results repeat. That's why transformation feels like trying to dig new roads through solid rock. Because your brain isn't just running outdated software. It's stuck in a loop of predictable collapses like a quantum photocopier, printing the same image with slight variations. But once you see this clearly, the power becomes yours. Because now, you're no longer trying to change from within the old collapse. You're training yourself to shift the pre-collapse signal. That means not just changing how you think, but how you feel while thinking. It means disrupting the automatic energy signature your brain defaults to when faced with uncertainty, resistance, or growth. This is where quantum meets neuroplasticity. Not as a buzzword, but as a process. Because your brain can rewire and the quantum field will follow that wiring. But not if you keep feeding it the same low-frequency commands. The loop is strong, but not stronger than awareness. And now that you understand the truth that your brain is a collapsing field, not a rigid machine, you're ready to see the next level of the trap. Why your own self-awareness, if misused, can actually reinforce the very cage you're trying to escape. Next, we will expose that paradox and show you how to navigate it without reactivating the loop you're finally ready to break. You've now seen that your mind isn't passively taking in the world. It's collapsing it. Moment by moment, it reduces infinite possibilities into a single, fixed version of reality. And that process doesn't happen in the background. It happens every time you notice. But here's the paradox. That very act of noticing, of becoming aware, can become its own kind of prison. This is the observer trap. You were told that self-awareness is the key to growth. You were told that noticing your patterns is how you rise above them. And in many ways, that's true, but only up to a point. Here's what almost no one talks about. When you observe yourself from the same identity you're trying to evolve beyond, the observation becomes a reinforcement, not a release. Because the frequency of the observer determines the meaning of what is seen. Let's break that down. You begin to notice your fear. You observe how you shrink in conversations. You analyze your resistance to visibility or success. You might even start journaling about it, meditating on it, naming the pattern. But if the one doing the observing is still energetically rooted in shame, doubt, or self-judgment, then the awareness isn't healing anything. It's just highlighting what already feels broken. Now you're not just afraid, now you know you're afraid. Now you're not just stuck. Now you label yourself as someone who is stuck. And that label feeds the loop. The mind loves labels because they give it certainty. But in the quantum model, labels act like energetic pins, holding a version of reality in place even when you're trying to move past it. And so, the more you observe yourself from the old identity, the part of you that believes you are wounded, small, or flawed, the more you reinforce that vibration into the field. This is the trap. It's not self-awareness that's the problem. It's where you're observing from. You can't shift reality by watching yourself through the eyes of the identity you're trying to leave behind. You end up creating feedback, not freedom. Let's go deeper. Say you notice your pattern of procrastination. You observe it happening, and immediately you go into analysis mode. Why do I always do this? I know better than this. I guess I'm just self-sabotaging again. That observation isn't neutral. It's soaked in emotional history. And that emotional frequency becomes the true signal sent to the field. Not the words, but the energy behind them. So now, instead of breaking the cycle, you've actually made the loop stronger. You've confirmed to yourself vibrationally that this is who you are. Not by doing it on purpose, but by unconsciously observing from the wrong altitude. The key is not to stop observing. The key is to observe from above the loop, not inside it. And that requires a shift in self-perception. You must stop identifying with the pattern and start identifying as the field noticing the pattern. You're not the fear. You're the one noticing the fear. You're not the procrastination. You're the field within which that behavior is occurring. That one shift turns self-awareness from a trap into a portal. Because when you shift into neutral, non-judgmental observation, not as the broken identity watching itself fail, but as the creator noticing data, the entire frequency changes. The pattern doesn't get energy. It gets seen without being fed. That's when it starts to dissolve. The quantum field does not respond to the words you say. It responds to the state you broadcast. So when your observation is loaded with disappointment, frustration, or judgment, the field mirrors those emotions. But when you observe with neutrality, true neutrality, your state changes. You stop anchoring yourself in the old vibration. And that's when the wave can collapse differently. Now you're no longer the victim of the pattern. You're the witness, and the witness holds the power. You start recognizing, this isn't me. This is just energy moving. And that recognition doesn't reinforce the cage. It opens it. But this takes practice. Because the moment you fall back into ego-based identification, I always do this, I'll never change, here I go again. You've re-entered the loop. Your observation becomes entangled with belief, and belief collapses reality. So how do you stay outside the loop? You create a new observer state. One that holds awareness without conclusion, that sees patterns without labeling them as identity, that tracks emotion without making it personal. This is the shift from self-awareness to field awareness. And it's what keeps you from reactivating the same version of yourself while trying to change. Because the trap isn't just the behavior. It's the lens through which you interpret the behavior. And that lens, when distorted, pulls you right back into resonance with the old frequency. But when you learn to shift your lens, you're no longer stuck analyzing your cage. You're holding the key to walk out of it. Next, we will move past the illusion of problems altogether and uncover why what you've been calling problems are really just patterns. And once you learn how to read those patterns, everything begins to change. Now that you've escaped the trap of observing yourself from the same identity you're trying to outgrow, a much deeper shift becomes available. It's the realization that what you've been calling problems in your life are not personal flaws. They're not character defects. They're patterns. And those patterns are not unique to you. They are expressions of energetic loops, running inside the quantum mind, repeating themselves until they are interrupted. The mistake most people make is treating symptoms as standalone problems. I have money issues. I have trust issues. I have commitment issues. But all of these are just surface-level expressions of a deeper energetic pattern that is running like software. And until that pattern is interrupted, the same problems, with different names and different faces, will show up again and again. You are not stuck because of what's happening. You are stuck because of how it's patterned. And patterns are not conscious. They're automatic. They're how the brain conserves energy and the quantum mind maintains coherence. That means the majority of your reality is not the result of fresh thinking. It's repetition, not of actions, but of frequency. You wake up each day and, unless something interrupts the default, you tune yourself to the same emotional and mental signature. You react the same way. You think the same thoughts. You assign the same meanings. And so, the field collapses the same timeline. Different characters. Same story. It's not life doing it to you. It's your internal architecture repeating itself. Now, here's where the power begins to come back. Because a pattern, by definition, is predictable. And anything predictable can be seen. Anything seen can be interrupted. And anything interrupted can be changed. But to do that, you need to stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what's the pattern here? The moment you shift from interpreting life as random to reading it as patterned, you gain leverage. You stop fighting problems and start tracking them. Here's how it works. A problem might say, I always attract emotionally unavailable partners. But the pattern says, I am resonating with relationships that match my unresolved wounds. The problem says, I can't seem to grow my business. The pattern says, my nervous system is protecting me from visibility due to past rejection. Once you locate the pattern beneath the surface event, everything becomes data, not personal failure. And that depersonalization is what opens the path to real transformation. Because patterns are not moral. They're not punishments. They're energy returning to its most familiar frequency. Your field wants coherence. So if a past version of you carried shame, guilt, or fear, and that version never got updated, your field will continue returning to those settings. Not because you deserve it, but because that's the resonance it still holds. This is why healing isn't always about fixing the wound. Sometimes it's about breaking the pattern that keeps triggering the wound. You don't need to be perfect to change. You need to become aware of what's repeating. And stop feeding it. And the fastest way to do that is through new input, not just in thought, but in frequency. Because the moment you act, think, or feel in a way that interrupts the old loop, you introduce quantum uncertainty. And uncertainty is where new timelines begin. That single crack in the pattern creates space for a new signal, a new broadcast, and from that, a new version of your life begins to collapse into form. So don't just fight your problems. Read them. They're patterns playing out until you stop feeding the field the same instruction. Next, we will explore the source of many of those patterns, memory. Not memory as you know it, but as an illusion that reshapes both your past and your future every single day. You now understand that your life isn't a series of problems. It's a series of repeating patterns. Patterns shaped not by what's happening now, but by what you remember happening then. But memory is not a neutral recording. It's not a static archive of your life. It is an active, malleable, emotionally biased filter, reshaping itself every time you recall it. That's the illusion. You think you're remembering the past, but you're actually rewriting it again and again, and then projecting that edited version into your future. Let's break it down. Every time you remember something, your brain pulls up the memory as a wave, flexible, dynamic, incomplete. And the state you're in while remembering it influences how it's stored again. So if you recall a childhood experience while feeling disempowered or ashamed, your brain rewires the memory to reflect that emotional context. Even if that wasn't how it originally happened, you're not recalling the past. You're rebuilding it in real time, based on the frequency of your present. And once rebuilt, that version of the memory becomes the one you trust. So now, when you face new choices, you don't respond from possibility. You respond from a re-edit, emotionally tinted history. That's how the memory illusion traps you. You think you're reacting to life, but you're really reacting to a version of your past that may never have existed, at least not in the way your mind currently frames it. This is why it feels like the past keeps chasing you. Because the version of yourself you built in response to past events keeps being reactivated, not by reality, but by how you remember reality. The field doesn't care whether your memories are accurate. It responds to the signal you send while holding those memories. If your memory of betrayal is charged with fear, distrust, and resentment, the quantum field interprets that frequency as your current state. So it mirrors experiences that confirm that reality, not to punish you, but to stay coherent with what you're broadcasting. This is how your past keeps creating your future, not because of fate, but because of emotional patterning wrapped inside memory. Here's the deeper twist. Because memory is unstable, it can also be used as a tool, not just a trap. You can choose to recall your past differently. You can re-enter a memory with a new emotional state. And when you do, the brain rewires the memory with that new signal. This isn't denial. It's neural recoding. Let's say you remember a moment of rejection from years ago. Typically, you'd recall it while feeling embarrassment or pain. That emotion bonds with the memory, and your future relationships are filtered through that lens. But what happens if you consciously revisit the memory from a state of empowerment? You feel calm, centered, safe, and now you see it not as a failure but as a redirection. Not as proof you're unworthy, but as confirmation that you weren't aligned. That emotional shift rewires the memory. And now, instead of reacting to rejection with fear, your field begins to respond with neutrality or even gratitude. That change, subtle as it seems, sends a new signal to the quantum field. And from that point forward, you collapse different experiences around love, trust, and connection. This is the quantum upgrade of memory. It's not about erasing the past. It's about recharging the signal it sends to your future. Because every time you remember, you broadcast. And every broadcast is a vote for what kind of reality the field should mirror. So, if you keep replaying victim memories with victim emotion, the field says, "Got it, let's generate more of that frequency." But if you consciously transform those memories into empowered versions, the signal changes, and the pattern starts to break. Here's how you begin. First, identify the recurring emotion in your memory. What's the core feeling? Abandonment? Shame? Unworthiness? Then, re-enter the memory deliberately. Visualize it. See the younger you. But now, instead of just reliving it, reframe it, not with fantasy, but with new interpretation. Ask yourself, what else could this have meant? What other perspective might be equally valid? How can I see this not as the cause of my limitation, but as the origin of my strength? As you shift the meaning, the emotion begins to shift. And with it, the energetic imprint on your field dissolves. This isn't just healing. It's future-proofing. Because the moment the memory changes, so does the signal your quantum mind sends when similar situations arise. Now, instead of collapsing an old version of you in response to a present event, the field begins to respond with higher options. You stop repeating. You start realigning. And this is crucial. It's not the memory itself that defines your frequency. It's the emotion anchored to that memory. So change the emotion and you change your frequency. Change your frequency, and you change the future being collapsed right now. Next, we will shift from memory to momentum and explore how your energy doesn't just shape what you remember, but what you see right now, and why your reality keeps mirroring the exact frequency you're afraid to admit you're still broadcasting. You've seen how memory rewrites itself based on your current state. Now it's time to go one step further into the real-time mechanics of how your energetic signature shapes the reality in front of you. This is the feedback field. Here's the core truth. Reality is not static. It's dynamic. It is molded and collapsed by your frequency in every moment. Not your thoughts alone, but the sum total of your energy, mental, emotional, physical, and subconscious. You're not just perceiving the world. You're constantly instructing it. And the field doesn't respond to what you intend. It responds to what you emit. That's why you can tell yourself, I'm confident, and still attract situations that reflect insecurity. Because beneath the words, your energy is still carrying self-doubt, and the field always listens to energy first. The field is not judging you. It's mirroring you. Think of it like a quantum echo. Whatever you broadcast, the field returns in the form of experiences, people, and circumstances that reinforce that signal. So if your internal state is stress, you'll notice more chaos. If your internal state is scarcity, you'll spot more limitations. If your internal state is resentment, you'll magnetize conflict, even if you never speak a word of it. Your energy is a frequency generator, and that frequency tells the field what version of reality to lock in. Here's where most people miss the mark. They think they need to think better. They focus on changing their thoughts without changing the emotional charge beneath them. But frequency isn't just a thought. It's the tone behind the thought. It's the vibration that wraps around your words, your posture, your breath, your expectations. That's what the feedback field listens to. So while your mind may say, I want success, your field might still be radiating fear of failure. And the feedback from reality? More situations that reinforce hesitation, blockages, and frustration. This creates a loop, one most people never notice. Your energy broadcasts, the field responds, you interpret that response, and your energy reacts, starting the cycle all over again. This is the energetic autopilot that keeps you stuck. Not because you lack vision, but because you haven't shifted the default frequency you're broadcasting all day long. But here's the breakthrough. Once you become conscious of your energetic output, you can begin sending a new signal, even before anything changes outside of you. You can feel abundance before money arrives. You can radiate certainty before the outcome is known. You can align your nervous system to peace, and the field will return experiences that match that signature. It doesn't happen all at once, but the field is incredibly responsive to consistency. The longer you hold a coherent frequency, the more reality must organize around it. Not because you forced it, but because you tuned into a signal powerful enough to bend the field. This is not a law of attraction gimmick. It's field mechanics. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to become aware. Not of your thoughts, but of your state. Ask yourself regularly, what am I broadcasting right now? Is this frequency aligned with the reality I want to experience? Or am I leaking signals of doubt, fear, and lack? Once you begin asking those questions honestly, you stop being at the mercy of the feedback loop and start shaping it. Next, we will expose one of the most dangerous misuses of energy, how fear creates attraction, and why your subconscious can unknowingly turn your deepest fears into your most repeated realities. You've now seen how your energy becomes a broadcast, a signal, command, and the quantum field doesn't respond to what you say you want, it reflects what you truly radiate. Now we're going to expose one of the most frustrating and invisible traps in the entire system. You don't just manifest what you want, you manifest what you fear. Not because fear is stronger than desire, but because fear, when charged with enough emotional energy, becomes a dominant frequency. It becomes magnetic, not metaphorically, literally. Here's why. Fear activates your nervous system. It puts your entire body into heightened attention. And attention, especially emotional attention, amplifies a signal. So when fear becomes your focus, the quantum mind receives a powerful instruction. This is important. This is real. This is what matters. And without judgment, the field says, copy that. It begins scanning possibilities and collapsing them into experiences that match the tone of that fear. This isn't a punishment. This is coherence. The field is loyal to your dominant signal, not your surface-level wish. And if your dominant signal is dread, panic, or mistrust, then it will begin organizing reality to keep you aligned with that frequency. Here's how it sneaks in. You fear failure, so you overanalyze. You try harder. You micromanage every detail. But the field doesn't read effort. It reads desperation. It reads insecurity. It reads collapse is coming. So the feedback it sends? Delays, blocks, miscommunication, disappointment. Not because you're wrong to want success, but because the success you're chasing is coded with the fear of losing it. This is quantum self-sabotage. It's not that you don't want good things. It's that you fear not having them, and the fear sends the louder signal. And this is why your deepest wounds tend to get repeated. You fear abandonment, so you become hypervigilant in relationships. You overcheck, overquestion, overprotect. The field doesn't hear love. It hears, I expect to be left. So it sends you people and events that confirm the expectation. And now it feels like you manifested your worst fear. But it wasn't random. It was the feedback field staying loyal to the signal you unknowingly prioritized. Here's what's worse. Your fear is often wrapped inside your identity. You don't just fear being broke. You see yourself as the one who struggles. You don't just fear being rejected. You carry the label of not enough. So the fear isn't just emotional. It's structural. It's woven into how your quantum mind sees the world and how it expects the world to respond. And expectations collapse reality. So how do you change it? First, recognize that fear is not the enemy. Fear is information. It's a spotlight showing you the exact frequency that needs to be acknowledged and retuned. You don't need to erase fear. You need to disarm it. Because when fear runs unchecked, it becomes the emotional driver of your manifestation. But when fear is seen, named, and neutralized, it loses its charge. And that charge is what gives fear its power to collapse the timeline you don't want. Let's be clear. This isn't about avoiding fear. It's about changing your relationship to it, so it no longer dominates your frequency. Ask yourself this: where is fear hiding in my goals? Where is fear wrapped inside my motivation? Am I chasing success because I'm aligned with expansion, or because I'm terrified of being seen as a failure? That single shift in clarity can realign your entire field. Because when your actions are rooted in fear, the energy they emit will always attract more situations that reinforce that fear. But when your actions come from alignment, from coherence, from clarity, from internal safety, the field reflects that too. This is where true freedom begins. You stop chasing things out of fear and start creating from a state of inner stability, even if the fear still whispers. You see it, you hear it, but you don't follow it. And the moment fear stops being the frequency you lead with, the field starts mirroring a very different version of reality. That's not wishful thinking. That's quantum architecture. Next, we will see how beliefs, not just emotions, begin to physically crystallize into form, and how the code of belief becomes the structure reality builds itself around. Think of belief as a lens. Not a lens that just looks outward, but a lens that shapes everything that enters your awareness. You could be standing in front of opportunity, You could be receiving love, abundance, recognition. But if your belief says, "I'm not worthy of this," you will either distort it, sabotage it, or reject it without even realizing. Because your mind doesn't allow in what doesn't match the code. The quantum field offers infinite possibilities. Your belief system decides which ones collapse into matter. Not because it has power over the universe, but because it has power over you. Over what you look for, what you notice, what you act on, and most importantly, what you energetically align with. Let's make this real. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll miss every sign of loyalty and commitment. You'll fixate on red flags. You'll ignore healthy signals. You'll interpret neutral behavior as threat. And the quantum field? It reflects that orientation. Now the people you meet mirror your mistrust. Now the field filters you into experiences that prove your assumption correct. Not because it's true, but because it's encoded in the collapse. This is the collapse code. It's the hidden instruction inside your energy field telling the quantum system, "Only show me what fits the script." And until that script changes, the scenes in your life will stay the same. Here's the part most people miss. Beliefs don't just shape perception. Over time, they shape matter. If you carry long-term beliefs of stress, lack, or fear, that signal doesn't just shape external events, it affects your biology. Cells respond to the emotional environment created by belief. Hormones adjust. Immune responses shift. Posture, expression, voice tone, all subtly change to fit the dominant belief structure. And your body becomes a living mirror of your thoughts. So belief doesn't just bend time and outcomes, it sculpts your reality at every level. Here's where your power begins to reawaken. Beliefs are not facts. They are decisions you made in moments of heightened emotion, moments that locked in meaning. You didn't inherit truth. You inherited emotion, language, repetition, and from that, constructed what felt like truth. But now you can challenge it. Now you can ask, what would collapse differently in my life if I changed the code? What realities would become available if I updated the script? This isn't about pretending. It's about shifting your state so the new belief can become believable, emotionally, neurologically, and energetically. Start small. Challenge a belief with a single question. Is this the truth? Or is it a rehearsed truth? That question disrupts the auto-collapse. It creates just enough uncertainty for new timelines to enter. You don't have to rewrite every belief overnight. You only need to introduce enough energetic friction that the field no longer sees the old belief as your dominant instruction. That's when reality stops looping. That's when matter rearranges. Next, we will take this even further and address the question that haunts almost everyone trying to change. If belief shapes everything, why does it still feel impossible to change? By now, you've realized that belief doesn't live in your logic. It lives in your energy. It shapes your filters, your actions, your biology, and the version of the universe that collapses around you. But here's the frustrating part. Even when you know your beliefs are outdated, even when you want to change, it can still feel like nothing actually shifts. Why? Because belief is only one part of the equation. The other part, the hidden part, is safety. Your brain and body are not wired to chase truth. They're wired to seek familiarity. And what's familiar is often what's broken. That's the trap. Your nervous system doesn't care if the old belief causes suffering. It only cares that it's predictable. And predictability equals survival, at least from the perspective of a brain still coded by evolutionary safety systems. So when you try to shift a belief, when you reach for something new, your body interprets that as threat. Even if the change is good, even if the belief is empowering, even if the new reality would liberate you, if it's unfamiliar, it triggers defense. This is why you can journal affirmations, set intentions, visualize success, and still wake up in the same loop. Because beneath the mental effort is a nervous system broadcasting one message to the field. Staying the same feels safer than becoming new, and the field once again mirrors that signal. So let's be clear. Change feels impossible not because it is, but because your inner systems are trained to protect the old identity. Even when that identity is limiting, even when that identity is self-destructive, even when that identity is based on trauma, scarcity, or fear. If it's familiar, it gets defended. That's the lie. The idea that you're not changing because you're not trying hard enough. When the truth is, you're trying to force change through resistance, not through alignment. So how do you break the cycle? You stop making change a threat. You stop associating transformation with danger. You begin to show your nervous system that becoming new can be safe. Not all at once, but gradually, deliberately, repeatedly. Here's how. Micro-adjustments. Not massive leaps. Not giant disruptions. Small, repeatable shifts that train your system to accept the new state without panic. You wake up and speak differently. You walk into a room with a slightly more open posture. You breathe slower before entering the meeting. You choose one action that belongs to the next version of you, and you do it gently with awareness. The goal is not speed. It's consistency, because the nervous system rewires based on evidence, not theory. And every time you show it that nothing bad happened when you stepped into the new belief, the resistance decreases, the fear response fades, and your field begins to broadcast something new, safety in the unknown. Once that signal changes, the quantum field no longer has to mirror the old identity. It begins to return opportunities aligned with your updated coherence. This is how change becomes inevitable, not by pushing, by updating your internal sense of what is safe to receive. Because until something feels safe, it won't feel real. And if it doesn't feel real, you won't collapse it into reality, no matter how badly you want it. You're not broken. You're defended. And your defenses are rooted in identity. Next, we will go to the heart of that identity and reveal why your sense of self, more than anything else, decides what version of reality your quantum mind is allowed to collapse. By now, it's clear that your external life reflects an internal script, one shaped by belief, filtered by fear, and locked in place by what your system perceives as safe. But even when you challenge those beliefs, even when you introduce safety into the new state, you'll still feel a strange resistance pulling you backward. That resistance isn't a personal flaw. It's biology. Your brain is designed to conserve energy, and the most energy-efficient thing it can do is repeat what it already knows. That's why change feels like friction, because neurologically it is. Every time you attempt a new pattern, your brain has to fire new neurons in unfamiliar sequences. That process takes effort, focus, and repetition. Costs energy. Meanwhile, your old identity, your habits, reactions, language, and emotional responses are already hardwired. They fire automatically. No resistance, no effort, just familiar loops. So even when you want to act differently, your brain drags you back to the efficient path. That path is called a neural loop, and it's why people stay the same for years, even decades, without realizing they're in a pattern. Here's how it works. You experience a trigger. You respond in a way that's neurologically rehearsed. You feel the same emotion. You repeat the same thought. And the behavior reaffirms your identity. The loop completes, and the pattern survives another day. This is not happening consciously. It's happening at the speed of survival. Because the brain's priority isn't growth. It's predictability. Predictability makes you feel stable, even if the results are painful. That's why you can logically understand your patterns and still repeat them, because until you interrupt the loop with both intention and action, the system prefers the path of least resistance. Here's the deeper insight. The more emotionally charged a past behavior is, the stronger the neural connection becomes. Which means trauma, shame, guilt. These aren't just emotional events. They're energetic amplifiers. They turn simple thoughts into fortified networks. So your inner critic is not just a voice. It's a pathway your brain has rehearsed 1,000 times. And the more you think, I'm not enough, the faster and more automatic that thought becomes. Not because it's true, because the brain got efficient at it. So, the goal isn't to fix your thoughts. The goal is to stop feeding the loop, to introduce new inputs that gradually reduce the charge of the old network. This is where neuroplasticity becomes your greatest tool, because the same brain that learned limitation can learn expansion. It just needs consistent interruption. Here's how you begin. Every time the loop starts, pause. Literally. Don't react. Don't explain. Don't justify. Just pause. That moment of stillness weakens the circuit. It gives your awareness room to choose a different signal. Then redirect. Not by thinking positively, but by embodying the opposite frequency. If the loop says play small, you shift your posture. If the loop says don't speak, you say one true thing. If the loop says run, you stay just 5 seconds longer. That micro-choice creates a crack in the pattern. And over time, the cracks grow. Eventually, the old pathway weakens. The new one strengthens. And the brain begins to prefer the new loop, not because it's more true, but because it's become more efficient. That's when change becomes easy. Not at the start, but once the brain stops fighting it. This is the real work of transformation. It's not loud. It's not glamorous. It's micro-interruptions, repeated until your system no longer defaults to the old self. And the moment that happens, the field responds. Because now your energy isn't tied to old loops. Now your signal is clean. But there's one deeper layer we haven't addressed, the core of your personal programming. Your identity. And next we will explore why the version of you you're still loyal to is often the greatest obstacle to the version of you you're trying to become. You've disrupted thoughts. You've seen the loops. You've begun to understand how beliefs, fear, and energy shape what the field reflects. But now we arrive at the root. Identity. Because no matter what you learn, try, or intend, your quantum mind will always collapse reality in a way that stays coherent with who you believe you are. Not who you want to be. Not who you say you are. Who you unconsciously identify as. Identity is the master program. It's the hidden operating system that filters every decision, every expectation, every energetic output you send into the field. And here's what most people don't realize. Identity is not a conclusion. It's a survival strategy. It was shaped through repetition, reward, fear, and feedback. It started forming long before you could think critically. It grew through stories you were told and stories you told yourself about who you needed to be to get love, to stay safe, to belong. So now, when you try to shift your life, you aren't just changing thoughts. You're threatening identity. And the identity will fight back even if you consciously want the upgrade. Let's make this real. If your identity is the caretaker, then receiving support will feel wrong. If your identity is the underdog, then success will trigger sabotage. If your identity is the broken one, then healing will feel like a betrayal of the story that kept you safe. And even as you set goals and dream bigger, the old identity whispers, "This isn't you. This doesn't fit. This is dangerous." So what happens? You self-correct. You shrink. You hesitate. You unconsciously move back into alignment with the old self, not because it's better, but because it's known. And the field collapses around that known identity again. This is why change often feels like loss. Because to become someone new, you have to release the version of you that doesn't exist without the wound. The mask. The defense. And that release feels like death, even if the life you're stepping into is infinitely better. Here's the truth. You can't just add a new identity on top of the old one. You must shed the outdated version. Grieve it. Thank it. And then consciously step into the frequency of who you now choose to be. That means creating evidence every single day that aligns with the new identity. It means taking actions that don't feel natural yet, because you're still building the neural and energetic structure of the new self. And it means holding that identity with precision, especially when life tries to test it. Not because life is against you, but because the field is checking for coherence. It's asking, are you really this version yet? Can you stay aligned even when the mirror shows resistance? And when your answer is yes, not just in word, but in frequency, the feedback loop changes. Because now the field is receiving a clean instruction. This is who I am now. Not as performance, not as delusion, but as energy. Identity isn't about convincing yourself. It's about collapsing the version of you that no longer matches your becoming, and choosing moment by moment to walk in the alignment of the one that does. Next, we will meet the force that protects the old identity at all costs, the voice of limitation that lives inside your own head, the ego, and will reveal exactly how it resists quantum leaps and how to keep it from pulling you back into the known. Now that you've confronted the truth about identity, that it governs the instructions your field receives, it's time to meet the most clever, subtle, and persistent guardian of that identity, the ego. Not ego as arrogance, ego as structure, as the voice of the familiar, as the internal force that says, "We've survived this long doing it this way, don't change the formula now." The ego isn't evil. It's ancient. It evolved to help you adapt, belong, and protect yourself from perceived danger. But what it sees as danger isn't always what's actually dangerous. To the ego, the unknown is threat, success is risk, expansion is exposure, and your next level self, that's a complete identity disruption. So even when you're reaching for transformation, the ego interprets that as instability, and its job is to keep you in the realm of what feels safe. Even if that safety is built on limitation. That's why right before a breakthrough, you often feel the strongest pull backward. Right before something clicks, you'll sabotage. Right before the leap, you'll hesitate. Right before the shift, you'll suddenly become unsure, confused, overly critical, or overwhelmed. This isn't random. It's the ego's last stand. It's the system panicking, trying to restore the previous signal, trying to close the portal you just cracked open. Let's break it down. You commit to the new identity. You begin thinking and acting differently. The field responds, you get a glimpse of what's possible. A new opportunity, a new person, a new insight, and then the voice. Who do you think you are? This won't last. You're getting ahead of yourself. What if you mess this up? It sounds like logic, sounds like caution, but it's the ego reaching for the emergency brake, because its loyalty is to survival, not expansion. And as you begin to separate from the old version of yourself, the ego senses death. Not literal death, but death of the only identity it knows how to maintain. And so it fights, not with fire, but with thought. The ego hides inside your most reasonable excuses, your most sophisticated rationalizations, your most urgent doubts. And if you're not conscious of that voice, you'll mistake sabotage for sensibility. Here's the test. The closer you get to a version of you that's no longer driven by fear, guilt, or unworthiness, the louder the ego will become, because now you're not just changing behavior. You're threatening the story the ego was built to protect. But that voice isn't a signal to stop. It's proof you're on the edge of the leap. So don't fight the ego. Don't argue with it. Don't try to silence it. Recognize it. Name it. And respond with leadership. You say, I hear you. I know why you're showing up. But we're going anyway. That moment, that inner authority is what the quantum field is waiting for. Because now, your frequency isn't being broadcast by fear. It's being shaped by command. You've stopped letting the ego decide what's real. You've chosen to collapse a reality that reflects the higher self, not the survival self. And when that becomes your default, the ego loses its grip. It no longer needs to sabotage because it's no longer being asked to protect a version of you that doesn't exist anymore. That's how you integrate the ego, not by killing it, by leading it. And in doing so, you open the next portal, the space between your old self and your new one, the place where everything is possible and nothing is guaranteed. That's where we're going next. Now you're in the in-between. You've begun to quiet the old identity. You've stopped letting the ego run the show. You've felt the signal begin to shift. But suddenly everything feels uncertain. The momentum stalls. The excitement fades. You question what's real. Welcome to the quantum gap. This is the space between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the void between patterns. The energetic pause between collapsing the old version of reality and stabilizing the new one. And it's here that most people turn back. Not because the new isn't coming, but because the absence of the old feels like chaos. Your brain wants structure. The field wants coherence. But this gap offers neither. It offers silence, ambiguity, energetic instability, and that triggers a deep sense of loss. Not because you lost something tangible, but because your identity is disassembling. And before the new identity fully takes hold, the system feels exposed. This is the moment of maximum vulnerability. You're no longer broadcasting the old signal with confidence. But the new one hasn't stabilized yet. So the field pauses. It waits. It listens. And in that pause, you feel lost. This is the quantum test. Not a test of worthiness. A test of frequency. Can you hold the new signal? Without external proof? Can you remain loyal to the version of you that has not yet been validated by reality? Because if you hold that state long enough, the field must respond. Not by rewarding you, but by reflecting what you finally made stable inside yourself. But most people collapse here. They reach into the gap with the old identity. They beg for signs, panic for reassurance, and slip back into the comfort of the known. And the field, always loyal, says, "Copy that," and mirrors the old frequency again. So the gap becomes a loop, and transformation never completes. But not for you, because now you know what this space is. You recognize it for what it is, not a dead end, but a sacred liminal zone. The space where frequency is tested, where the old no longer applies, and the new has not yet arrived. You don't need to do more here. You need to become more stable in the new energy. You breathe in the unknown. You let silence build trust. You learn to feel safe in not knowing. Because the unknown is not empty. It's full of everything that could be. It's a blank space waiting for a consistent signal. A field of infinite variables waiting to collapse around certainty. And certainty doesn't come from results. It comes from your state. So how do you cross the gap? You hold the new identity without the old evidence. You trust the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. You act from alignment, not from fear. And when the field sees that your signal has become stable, not desperate, not chaotic, not panicked, it reorganizes matter around that instruction. That's when the new begins to arrive. Not gradually, not with warning, but with sudden coherence. The people show up. The insight drops in. The breakthrough emerges. Because now your quantum mind has proven to the field that the old identity is no longer in charge. And that's when the loop finally breaks. Next, we will unlock the real method for anchoring the new version of yourself before your mind fully agrees. You'll discover how to create transformation without waiting for permission from your old self. You've stepped into the quantum gap, the space where your past has lost power but your future isn't locked in yet. It's uncomfortable. It's destabilizing. It's also the most potent moment of creation. Because here, you are no longer confined by the old pattern. And if you can stay conscious in this space, you can begin to reprogram the field. But here's where most people make the mistake. They wait until they feel different before they act different. They wait until they believe before they behave. They want to be convinced before they commit. And in doing that, they delay their transformation, sometimes indefinitely. Because your current belief system was built by your past. And if you wait for that belief system to approve the new, you're still asking your old self to authorize your future. That will never work. To collapse a new reality, you have to act from a state that hasn't been validated yet. You have to emit a frequency your nervous system doesn't fully trust yet. You have to move like the future is already true, even while your brain still clings to the evidence of the past. This is the real reprogramming. Not wishful thinking, not pretending. It's acting in coherence with the version of you that already lives the life you want, and doing it before your inner critic signs off. Let's make this practical. You want to be someone who speaks confidently? Then you begin speaking that way, not after the fear is gone, but while it still trembles in your throat. You want to build wealth? Then you start treating your current resources with precision, discipline, and gratitude, even if it's just a few dollars. You want to be loved in a healthy relationship? Then you start choosing boundaries, honesty, and self-respect, even if the past trained you to expect abandonment. These aren't performances. They're permissions. Every time you take aligned action before belief has caught up, you send a new signal into the field. This is who I am now. And when that signal becomes consistent, even slightly, the field begins to respond. Not instantly, not because you faked confidence, but because you transmitted coherence. And coherence bends reality. That's why small, consistent action beats big, emotional breakthroughs. Because breakthroughs fade, but new behavior, anchored in new energy, starts to build momentum. And that momentum rewires your identity, your nervous system, and your entire energetic field. But here's the challenge. Your old self will scream. It will whisper, "This is fake. This isn't you. You're going to fail. People will see through you." And all of that discomfort is actually feedback that the old system is weakening. It's not a warning. It's a sign. Because your quantum mind is used to collapsing reality around your old patterns. When you begin to override those patterns, consciously, consistently, and with presence, the field loses its old instructions. And in the absence of the old signal, something extraordinary happens. The quantum vacuum begins to form, a space of energetic openness. And that openness attracts new data, new people, new feedback, new probabilities. But you have to trust the signal before you see the result. You have to broadcast the frequency before the reward appears. This is not delusion. It's alignment. You're not lying to yourself. You're telling the field the truth before your body has fully caught up. Because belief is not a prerequisite for action. Belief is a byproduct of repeated energetic alignment. You don't need to believe it to do it. You need to do it often enough that your system begins to believe. This is how new identity takes root. You feed the signal first, and let the results emerge later. So ask yourself, what would the future version of me do right now, before I feel ready? How would they think? How would they speak? How would they carry themselves? And then move, not to impress, not to perform, but to become. Because the more often you move from that future state, the more real it becomes. Not just in your mind, but in the field. And when the field receives enough consistent data that this new version is who you actually are, it stops testing and starts reflecting. That's when manifestation becomes predictable. Not because you tricked the system, but because you became the signal. But there's one more paradox you have to master. Even as you create from that new state, there's a danger wanting it too much. Because when desire becomes obsession, the energy can turn against you. And that's what we're going to unravel next. The strange, often invisible way that desire itself can block the very outcomes you're trying to collapse. You've now seen that aligned action, taken before belief is present, reprograms your field faster than any affirmation ever could. But if you've been on this path long enough, you've likely felt the frustration of this strange pattern. You want something deeply, you focus on it, you work toward it, you visualize, you even act as if, and still it doesn't come. Why? Because wanting, especially when it becomes need, is a signal of lack. And the field always responds to your real signal, not your spoken goal. This is the paradox of desire. The more you obsess over the outcome, the more energy you emit that says, "I don't have this yet." The more emotional charge you place on the arrival of a thing, the more the quantum field hears, "This is missing. This is missing. This is missing." And what does the field do? It reflects the signal and continues to mirror the experience of not having. It's not denying your desire. It's staying loyal to your vibration. Because all manifestation is a collapse of frequency. And if your frequency is saturated in craving, chasing, or emotional attachment, then what gets collapsed is more distance. This is where most teachings fall short. They say, just think about what you want. Just visualize it. Just be obsessed with the goal. But obsession is anxiety. Obsession is separation. Obsession is, I need this to feel whole. And the field does not bring wholeness to a signal of separation. It mirrors it. So how do you want without repelling? By collapsing the distance between who you are now and who you would be if it were already done. Because the goal is not to want it harder. The goal is to become the version of you who already lives inside the experience. And allow the field to reflect that identity back to you. That's what dissolves the craving. You stop chasing the future. You let it match you. Let's make this practical. You want financial abundance? Stop vibrating at, when will it happen? Start showing up with the energy of, I already know how to handle it. You want love? Stop sending out the frequency of, why hasn't it come yet? Start embodying the peace of someone who no longer needs to prove their worth. This isn't detachment. It's integration. You're not pushing the desire away. You're collapsing it into now. By eliminating the emotional signal that says, I'm still waiting. Wanting becomes a block when it's emotionally drenched in lack. But it becomes a portal when it's paired with calm, aligned certainty. This is why desperation never works. Because desperation is the broadcast of fear, not clarity. And even if you say all the right things, the field mirrors the feeling, not the words. So check your signal. Are you moving from overflow or emptiness? Are you choosing because it's aligned, or because you hope it will fix how you feel? Every time you feel a surge of, I need this to happen, that's your cue. It means the ego has reattached. The frequency has slipped. The broadcast has turned from becoming into begging. And the remedy? Return to presence. Anchor in the now as if the future is already true. Act with dignity. Move with clarity. Release the obsession, not the intention, but the attachment. And the moment you stop vibrating, I need this, the field begins to reflect, it's already done. Next, we will explore the emotional dimension of this and reveal how the most powerful feelings you carry can either anchor you to the past or launch you into a future timeline with zero resistance. Now that you understand the paradox of desire, that wanting too much can block receiving, it's time to look even deeper. Because behind your desire is an emotion, and behind that emotion is gravity, a pull that either drags you back into the old timeline or anchors you into the frequency of the new one. This is emotional gravity. You carry feelings like weights, not metaphorically, energetically, and those feelings affect how your quantum field interprets your identity. Every day, you wake up and unconsciously download an emotional baseline. It might be anxious, it might be resentful, it might be shame-filled, or it might be flat, neutral, numbed, dulled. That baseline becomes the gravitational center of your frequency, and the field, loyal as ever, begins to collapse reality that matches it. So even when you act differently, even when you set new intentions, if your dominant emotional state stays the same, the quantum mind reads that as unchanged, and the loop continues. This is why surface-level change doesn't hold. Because underneath the thoughts, the goals, the routines, the emotional gravity is still pulling you back. Let's make this tangible. If your baseline emotion is guilt, you'll sabotage ease. If it's fear, you'll distort safety. If it's grief, you'll dim your light before anyone else can. You're not trying to repeat old pain, but your field is still encoded with it. And the pain is more familiar than joy. So your system interprets it as safer. That's the trap. Not that you choose the old emotions, but that you normalize them. And normalized emotion becomes identity. You begin to say things like, this is just how I am. I've always been this way. I don't even notice it anymore. That's emotional gravity at work. And that gravity doesn't just shape your mood, it bends your timeline. You walk into new experiences and filter them through the weight of old emotion. You project that emotion onto people. You interpret neutral events as evidence of your past. And so, nothing ever feels truly new, because the energy behind the moment hasn't changed. But here's the turning point. Emotion can be chosen, not repressed, not faked, chosen. You can consciously shift your emotional set point, not by denying how you feel, but by disidentifying from it. You begin to notice, I feel this, but it isn't me. I carry this, but it's not required. I've rehearsed this, but it's not truth. That awareness creates space. And in that space, a new frequency can emerge. Because the field doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be aligned. And alignment begins when your emotional state starts matching the timeline you say you want to live in. So if you want joy, stop waiting for it. Start generating it. Not performatively, but deliberately. Through your breath. Through your focus. Through micro-movements that contradict the gravitational pull of your past. This isn't toxic positivity. This is emotional calibration. You're not ignoring what's real. You're updating what's dominant. The dominant emotion controls the frequency. The frequency controls the collapse. The collapse becomes your world. So the moment you interrupt that default emotion, even briefly, you begin to wobble the timeline. and that wobble makes space for something new. Here's a simple practice. Ask yourself at any point in the day, what am I emotionally rehearsing right now? If the answer is lack, pause. Shift. Choose again. Breathe differently. Sit differently. Speak from a different tone. These are small actions, but they carry massive quantum consequence. Because every time you shift emotional gravity, even by 1 degree, you tilt the entire trajectory of your field. And repetition locks it in. Not dramatic emotion, not forced euphoria, but subtle consistency. You don't need to feel amazing all the time. You just need to stop anchoring in emotions that no longer represent the reality you're creating. And as your emotional signal upgrades, your energetic signature changes. And when the signature changes, the field must reorganize. Next, we will connect the final wiring. The need for emotional, mental, and energetic coherence. Because power doesn't come from intensity. It comes from agreement, when all parts of you broadcast the same frequency without contradiction. You've seen how emotional gravity keeps you locked into old timelines. You've felt how even a slight shift in feeling can tilt your entire energetic field. Now it's time to go from shifting parts to aligning the whole, because true change doesn't stick until there is coherence. Coherence means your thoughts, emotions, and energy are no longer contradicting each other. They're working as one. Most people don't realize they're broadcasting mixed signals. They think they're being intentional, but their body is anxious. Their voice is doubtful. Their emotions are confused. The field receives those cross-currents and reflects them back as inconsistency. You say you want clarity, but think chaotic thoughts. You say you want connection, but feel guarded. You say you want growth, but energetically resist challenge. That's not alignment. That's incoherence. And incoherence collapses unstable timelines. So how do you bring your system into full agreement? You start by becoming aware of the 3 signal generators. 1. The brain, your mental narrative. 2. The heart, your emotional signal. 3. The field, your energetic frequency. If those aren't saying the same thing, your reality becomes a fragmented reflection. Let's say you're launching a new project. Your brain says, this is going to work. But your heart says, I'm not sure I'm ready. And your energy says, what if I fail again? Now you're broadcasting 3 different instructions. The field doesn't know what to do with that, so it mirrors the confusion. You attract vague support, half-formed opportunities, mixed reactions. Not because you did something wrong, because the signal was scrambled. Coherence solves that. Coherence means your inner world is saying one thing, clearly, repeatedly, and powerfully. And when the message is unified, the field reflects it cleanly. So how do you create that coherence? You start by slowing down the signal. Most incoherence comes from speed, racing thoughts, reactive emotion, restless energy. But when you pause, breathe, and center your awareness in the body, the noise drops. You begin to feel what's actually aligned and what isn't. Then you sync the system. You ask, do my thoughts match the outcome I say I want? Do my emotions support or contradict that outcome? Is my energy field calm, focused and rooted, or chaotic and fragmented? If there's a mismatch, stop. Don't act. Don't force. Correct the frequency first. Because action taken from incoherence creates more distortion. But action taken from full alignment amplifies your impact. This is the foundation of quantum clarity. You're not just thinking clearer thoughts. You're becoming a unified signal. And when that happens, the field becomes responsive in ways you've never seen. It's not magic. It's physics. A coherent signal is stronger, cleaner, more magnetic. It doesn't ask. It instructs. And reality reorganizes accordingly. So train for coherence like it's your most valuable asset, because it is. That means choosing thoughts that match your vision. That means honoring emotions that lift your frequency. That means adjusting your energy field with care, through breath, movement, stillness, intention. When all 3 are in agreement, you become undeniable. You stop chasing outcomes. You start collapsing them. Next, we will reveal why Once you're in coherence, effort becomes almost irrelevant. Because now, the field isn't responding to what you're doing. It's responding to who you've become. You've seen that coherence, full internal alignment between thought, feeling, and energy, creates the strongest, cleanest signal your quantum mind can emit. But here's where the paradigm completely shifts. In this new operating system, the field no longer responds to how hard you try. It responds to how coherent your signal is. Effort doesn't move the needle. Frequency does. And that breaks everything you were taught. You were raised on effort. Work harder. Push more. Do whatever it takes. And maybe that gave you temporary success in a linear system. But in the quantum system, effort without energetic alignment produces noise, not results. Here's why. Effort comes from compensation. I'm not there yet, so I need to do more. It's a frequency of lack wrapped in productivity. And the field doesn't interpret what you intend with that effort. It mirrors the state you're broadcasting through it. When your signal says, I must try harder, the field reads, I am separate from what I want. And that instruction collapses more separation. That's the irony. The more you hustle from misalignment, the more the field reflects dissonance. You work long hours, but nothing sticks. You launch ideas, but they fizzle. You push, and end up right where you started. Because the field didn't need more action. It needed a stable signal. So what does that mean? You begin calibrating your energy first, then moving from that frequency. If the signal is clean, the movement becomes magnetic. You write the email and it resonates. You walk into the room and people feel it. You take the step and the next one appears already lit. This isn't passivity. It's intelligent creation. Because now you're not reacting from scarcity, you're initiating from stability. That shift changes everything. Let's say you're building a new version of your life. You have the vision. You've been doing the inner work. But you're still measuring success by volume, how many hours, how many calls, how many posts. And you start to feel burnt out, anxious, disconnected. That's your cue. That's incoherence disguised as discipline. So you stop. Not to quit. To realign. You ask, what frequency am I sending right now? If it's rushed, fearful, or forced, you pause. You regulate your nervous system. You reconnect to the version of you that acts from overflow, not survival. Then you move. And because the action came from coherence, the field doesn't need 20 steps to respond. It might only need one. That's the elegance of this model. The more coherent your signal, the less you have to force. Now, this doesn't mean you never act. It means your actions become exponentially more efficient, because the signal doing the heavy lifting is your state, not your schedule. And when people say, things just started falling into place, this is what they mean, even if they don't realize it. They weren't lucky. They were aligned. Here's the part most people resist. When you're deeply coherent, things might come too easily, and that confuses your old identity. It feels uncomfortable not to hustle. It feels suspicious to receive quickly. It feels wrong to win without pain. But that's not intuition. That's conditioning. You've been trained to trust effort, not energy, to associate work with worth. And coherence breaks that illusion. Because in the quantum system, it's not about how much you do. It's about how pure the signal is behind what you do. So instead of asking, am I doing enough? Start asking, is my signal clean? Am I acting from the timeline I want? Or from fear that I won't get there? That level of awareness turns every move into a frequency match or a mismatch. And when you learn to move only from alignment, reality responds faster, cleaner, more powerfully. Because now the field isn't being asked to fix confusion. It's being instructed by coherence. That's when manifestation accelerates. Not because you tried harder, but because the field finally had a clear instruction to follow. But there's one belief still in the way for most people: the illusion of time. Because even when the signal is clean, you might still find yourself waiting, calculating, measuring progress by days, weeks, years. That's the next veil we're about to rip down. Next, we will expose the lie that change takes time, and show you why, in the quantum model, the only thing that exists is now. You've trained yourself to value effort. You've learned to trust coherence. But there's one more layer keeping you stuck. and it runs silently in the background of every decision you make. Time. Not clock time, not schedules and calendars, but the deeply embedded belief that change is later, that becoming is eventual, that manifestation is on a timeline. This is one of the most subtle and destructive beliefs in the entire quantum model. Because the moment you place your vision in the future, you place your power outside the present. And the field can't collapse a future signal. It only collapses now. Now is the only access point. Now is the only portal. Now is the only frequency the field can respond to. Everything else, yesterday, tomorrow, next year, is a projection from the mind. The quantum field doesn't work in time. It works in alignment. So if your desire lives in the future, and your energy says, it's coming someday, the field mirrors. It's not here yet, and no matter how powerful your intention is, you remain in a state of separation. This is the trap of becoming. You think you're on a journey. You think you're working toward the next version of yourself. But if that version is always ahead, then it's never now. And if it's never now, the field has no reason to make it real. That's why most people stay stuck in potential. Because their energy always says, almost. So the field echoes, not quite. To collapse a timeline, you must become it now. Even if your mind doesn't believe it. Even if your reality doesn't reflect it yet. Because once you stop locating the shift in some imagined future and start broadcasting the identity now, everything begins to reorganize. This isn't a mindset trick. It's an energetic requirement. If you want a reality where you feel free, you must embody freedom now. Not later. Not once the circumstances align. But now. Because the field only reads your present state. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you are now. And this is where the illusion of time breaks. Because when you collapse into the frequency of your future self, time warps. Things that were supposed to take years happen in weeks. Opportunities appear that were impossible. Breakthroughs land with no warning. Not because you skipped the line. Because you stepped out of the timeline. You didn't speed up. You exited the illusion altogether. Now, this doesn't mean every outcome will appear instantly. But it does mean the energetic shift is instantaneous. And that shift is what determines everything that follows. The moment you stop waiting, the field stops deferring. Because waiting is a signal. And the signal says, not yet. Collapse that signal. Replace it with, I am already that. I am already aligned. I am already the one who lives that reality. And not just in thought, in action, tone, breath, movement. Bring the future here. Hold it as your current identity. And let the field recalibrate around it. That's when time bends. You begin to operate from now, not from hope, not from timeline projections. You start seeing time as optional. You stop asking, how long will this take? And start asking, what frequency would this version of me emit right now? Because if the frequency is real now, the result becomes inevitable. Not later, not someday. Now in form or in feeling or in path. That's the collapse. And it's only possible when you stop tracking time as your proof of progress. Progress isn't measured in minutes. It's measured in coherence, in state, in signal strength. Next, we will build on this timeless state by showing you how to feel safe in the unknown, and why the ability to live beyond the known is the single most powerful skill for limitless transformation. You've now stepped out of the timeline. You've felt the power of operating in the now, where the signal is clean and the field becomes responsive. But there's a problem. Most people can't stay there. Not because they lack discipline. Not because they're weak. But because they're addicted to the known. The known isn't safe because it's good. It's safe because it's predictable. And predictability is the nervous system's favorite drug. You've built your entire internal world. Thoughts, emotions, expectations, behaviors, around what you already know. Even if it's painful. Even if it's limiting. Even if it's outdated. The moment you leave it behind, your system panics. It doesn't feel like expansion, it feels like danger. That's why so many people sabotage their own breakthroughs. The unknown feels destabilizing. And destabilization activates fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being wrong. fear of failure, fear of success. And so they rush back to the known, the routine, the identity, the emotional set point, because even suffering feels better than uncertainty. But this is where the quantum shift must occur. You must train your body to feel safe in the unknown. You must recondition your nervous system to experience uncertainty as freedom, not threat. Because the unknown is not empty, it's not chaotic, it's not dangerous, it's possibility. It's the space where new timelines live. It's the field before collapse. It's the realm where you're no longer bound by past logic, history, or emotional default. But you can't just understand that intellectually. You have to feel it. You have to breathe in the unknown and remain still. Not scramble for answers. Not cling to old identity. Just be. This is energetic stability. You stop leaking power by rushing back to the known. You stop interrupting your shift with fear-based reactivity. You learn to hold frequency in the void. Let's make this practical. You quit the job. You leave the relationship. You release the old version of yourself. And then the silence hits. No feedback. No confirmation. Just space. This is the moment the old you would scramble. Check social media. Ask for validation. Rebuild a comfort zone. But the new you stays. The new you waits without anxiety. The new you trusts without evidence. And that energetic decision to stay in the unknown without collapse sends a new signal to the field. It says, I am no longer ruled by fear. I can hold expansion. I am not rushing to fix what isn't broken. And when the field receives that signal, it begins to respond. Not instantly, but intelligently. It sends aligned timelines that match your emotional maturity, not your urgency. This is how you shift not just your results, but your identity. You stop needing to know what's next. You start becoming the one who can handle not knowing. That's when you become magnetic, because the field responds powerfully to stillness, to inner steadiness, to energetic clarity that isn't rattled by gaps, pauses, or ambiguity. You start to feel, I'm okay even when I don't know. I'm enough even when no one sees. I'm whole even when the outcome isn't visible. That's power. That's the signal of a creator, not a reactor. The unknown becomes your playground. You stop fearing silence. You stop interpreting uncertainty as failure. You stop collapsing back into what's familiar. You remain aligned with what's possible. And in doing so, you become someone entirely new, someone not defined by what was, but someone designed for what could be. That's when you realize, living beyond the known isn't the risk. It's the requirement. Next, we will uncover why, even with all this awareness, 95% of your life still looks like a rerun of yesterday. And exactly how to break that autopilot starting now. You've learned how to hold the unknown. You've stopped begging your past for permission. You've stabilized your energy in the space where the future has not yet arrived. But there's one more loop still running. One more layer of the old self quietly scripting your reality. It's not your belief. It's not your mindset. It's your biology. More specifically, your unconscious patterns. Studies show that over 90%, and for some up to 95% of the thoughts, feelings, and actions you experience each day are not new. They're recycled, rehearsed, repeat broadcasts from the day before. And what's even more important than the number is the consequence. Because if your quantum field collapses reality based on the signal you emit, and your signal is mostly unconscious, then most of your reality is being generated by who you were yesterday, not by who you're becoming. That's the autopilot. You wake up and immediately re-download your identity. You check your phone. You remember your to-do list. You recall yesterday's stress, relationships, expectations. Your body goes into the same chemical state. Your thoughts begin repeating the same loops. Your behaviors follow the same tracks. And before you've consciously chosen anything, your field is already collapsing your old timeline. By 9 a.m., you're not creating. You're recreating. That's not because you're lazy or unmotivated. It's because your unconscious is efficient. Your brain seeks to minimize uncertainty by defaulting to what it already knows. Your nervous system loves familiar emotions, even if they're toxic. Your routines become identity, and identity becomes frequency. So how do you stop living in yesterday? You interrupt the loop, early, deliberately, and consistently. It starts the moment you wake up. Before your feet hit the floor, you consciously install the signal you want to send. You breathe into the identity you're becoming. You speak a new internal narrative. You change your posture, your rhythm, your inner tone. You act as if today is not a continuation, it's a selection. You are not a victim of your past. You are a curator of your frequency. But you must act fast. Because the longer you wait to choose the new state, the faster your system defaults to the old one. You have a limited window each morning where neuroplasticity is high and resistance is low. Use it. Move your body in a new way. Sit in silence longer than you usually do. Say the thing you've been scared to speak. Refuse to rehearse your limitations. Every microshift counts. Because your unconscious isn't evil, it's programmable. And repetition reprograms. But here's the key. Repetition without emotion is weak. The more feeling you bring to the new state, the more deeply it gets installed. That's why gratitude works. Not because it's nice, because it's energetically powerful. When you combine intention with elevated emotion, even briefly, your field begins to shift immediately. Now you're no longer broadcasting yesterday. You're signaling a new timeline. And the field listens. It doesn't wait for you to be perfect. It responds the moment your signal becomes authentic. So build newness into your day like a ritual. Interrupt autopilot behaviors. Catch unconscious thoughts mid-sentence. Shift your breath, your walk, your tone. And don't wait for results to validate it. Let the act of choosing the new state become the reward. Because now you're no longer surviving your schedule. You're sculpting your signal. And that signal begins to collapse a new version of the world around you. Not someday, but now. Next, we will go even deeper from awareness to structure and reveal how to physically begin rewiring the brain to support your quantum transformation using methods your biology is already wired to respond to. You now understand that 95% of your day runs on yesterday's instructions. Your field collapses what your body replays. Your biology becomes your biography. But here's the shift. Your brain isn't fixed. It's plastic. It rewires based on use. This isn't theory. It's neuroplasticity, the ability of your neural pathways to adapt, dissolve, or grow stronger based on attention, emotion, and repetition. So if most of your reality is built on habitual neural loops, that means you have the power to overwrite them, not through willpower alone, but through structured disruption. This is the neuroplastic rebellion. It's not loud. It's not chaotic. It's precise. It's the daily act of rewiring who your brain believes you are, until it can't remember the old version anymore. Let's make this real. You want to stop looping into anxiety? Then every time the anxious thought appears, you catch it and replace it with a pattern interrupt. You shift your posture. You move your eyes to a different direction. You say something out loud that disrupts the spiral. I'm not available for that timeline. This isn't mine anymore. Override in progress. Why does this matter? Because thought isn't just thought. It's circuitry. And when you respond to the same emotion in a new way, physically, audibly, mentally, your brain gets the message. This pathway is under review. And repeated enough times, that message turns into instruction. Old neural loops weaken. New pathways form. And the system recalibrates around your chosen identity. But this isn't about thinking differently once. It's about building ritualized rebellion into your routine. That means walking a different route, speaking in a tone you've never used before, moving your body with new rhythm, feeling a new emotion on purpose, even for 30 seconds. These tiny shifts aren't cosmetic. They're neurological. They interrupt automation. And the brain, once disrupted, begins to scan for what's now true. So if you act like someone new and feel something new and choose a new meaning all within the same window of time, the brain locks it in. Not because it's convinced, because it's adaptive. That's your leverage. Your brain doesn't care about your past. It cares about what's repeated with energy today. And that means the old self only survives through rehearsal. Stop rehearsing, and it starts to fade. Now let's talk specificity. To rewire a neural loop, you need 3 ingredients. 1. Intention. You must consciously recognize the old pattern the moment it activates. 2. Disruption, you need to break the pattern, not with willpower, but with interruption. Use voice, movement, breath, or a phrase. 3. Reinforcement. Replace the void with something new. A new behavior, a new emotional state, a new micro-choice. This isn't instant gratification. This is energetic retraining. And when you make it a lifestyle, not a phase, the rewiring becomes self-sustaining. Eventually, the brain stops reaching for the old pathway. Not because you fought it, because you starved it. And the new identity becomes the path of least resistance. That's the goal. Not to fight your patterns forever, but to replace them so completely that your system forgets the old loops even existed. This is when your field begins to reflect not just occasional coherence, but persistent identity. And now you're not managing change. You're living as someone for whom the old timeline no longer applies. Next, we'll explore the most critical window of each day, the moment that decides whether your field follows the old instructions or broadcasts a completely new signal to the quantum system. Your quantum mind collapses reality based on one thing, the frequency you emit. And while you now understand how to interrupt old loops, there's a moment of the day that still holds more power than most people ever realize. Your morning, not the clock time, but the first frequency you emit when your awareness comes online. That frequency is the template. It's the foundation. It's the instruction your field begins collapsing around from the moment your nervous system reactivates. And for most, that frequency is unconscious and inherited from yesterday. They wake up, grab the phone, check notifications, remember problems, scroll other people's lives, and by the time their feet hit the floor, their identity is already locked. The field receives a scrambled signal: anxiety, overwhelm, confusion, separation, and then that signal shapes the rest of the day. It wasn't life doing it to them. It was frequency unconsciously chosen. So here's the correction. You train your field to respond to you, not your habits. You create a frequency-first reality. That means before you check, plan, react, or respond, you broadcast, deliberately, intelligently, repeatedly. Your first few moments upon waking become sacred, not for spiritual performance, but for strategic calibration. Because the first signal you send is the strongest one. It sets the baseline your brain, body, and quantum field will follow. Let's break it down. When you wake up, your brain is in a more plastic state. Your identity is more malleable. Your unconscious mind is more accessible. This is your window. So instead of downloading the old self, you install the new one. You breathe with intention. You speak into the field as if the future is already real. You generate an emotional state that matches the timeline you want to collapse. Even 5 minutes is enough if the signal is clear. You say, I calibrate my field to peace. I broadcast wholeness. I signal clarity. I move as the version of me who already knows. Then you stand. You move. You choose your first action not based on memory, but based on alignment. This doesn't need to be elaborate. It needs to be consistent, because consistency is what reprograms the collapse. You start thinking in terms of quantum impact. Every frequency I emit this morning becomes a vote for which version of reality I get to experience. So you stop negotiating with habits. You stop bargaining with old states. And you begin to install your future in real time every single day. Frequency first. Because once your field gets that instruction early enough, the rest of the day organizes itself around it. Now the meetings shift. The people shift. The opportunities show up. Not because you micromanaged outcomes, but because your signal said, this is who I am. And the field, always loyal, says, copy that. Now imagine this happening not once, but every day. Now imagine the compounded quantum effect. You're no longer reacting to life. You're teaching life how to reflect you. And the first signal of the day becomes the most powerful tool in your arsenal. Next, we will unlock how this frequency-first approach reshapes not just your daily rhythm, but your entire sense of self, and how who you become begins to shape what you see. You now understand that how you start your day sets the frequency for everything that follows. The field doesn't wait for you to catch up. It mirrors your first instruction. But to sustain that shift beyond a few moments or hours, something deeper must evolve. Not just your actions, not just your habits, but your personality. Because personality is more than a social label. In the quantum system, it's your energetic baseline. It's the dominant combination of thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and expectations you carry into the world. And here's the kicker. Your personality becomes your personal reality. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are, which means your current personality is a frequency. And the field is collapsing timelines that align with that specific frequency every single day. So if you keep waking up and operating as the overwhelmed one, the anxious one, the one who never has enough, then no matter what you want, your field will default to creating the version of life that matches that identity. That's not a curse. That's coherence in action. Your world reflects who you are being, not who you are becoming in theory. So here's the question that changes everything. Who do I need to become for the reality I want to become possible? Not what should I do? Not what should I fix? Who must I be? Because when the answer to that question becomes your new internal standard, your field recalibrates. The shift is simple but not easy. It means replacing personality-based autopilot with quantum-based intention. Let's say the version of you you're becoming is bold, clear, emotionally grounded. Then that version thinks in longer time frames, speaks with fewer apologies, moves slower under pressure, feels safety even in uncertainty, chooses action aligned with vision, not reaction to fear. Now contrast that with your default settings, and you'll see where the incoherence still hides. This is the moment you begin to construct a quantum personality, not from memory, but from frequency. You stop referencing the past to define who you are. You stop using your wounds as identity tags. You stop carrying emotional contracts that no longer serve the version of you that's emerging. And in that space, you begin to update the code. You start to feel what it's like to become someone new. And here's the trick most miss. You don't wait to believe it. You behave as if it's real before it's real. You let behavior pull belief into alignment. That means showing up to your day with a new emotional palette. You speak as the version of you who no longer doubts. You move with the posture of the one who already knows. You solve problems from the frequency of already having the solution. This doesn't make you delusional. It makes you magnetic, because the field isn't comparing your past with your present. It's responding to your broadcast. And once that broadcast consistently matches a new personality, the one aligned with your desired timeline, everything begins to shift. Not instantly, but progressively, intelligently, precisely, because the field never gets it wrong. It's always mirroring your signal. So you don't need to chase transformation. You just need to become someone who no longer tolerates the version of reality you used to settle for. This is how identity creates experience. This is how the signal becomes stable. This is how the future starts arriving on schedule. Next, we will make this even more visible by showing you how reality doesn't just respond to your personality. It reflects it like a mirror, and you'll learn how to use that reflection to course-correct your frequency in real time. Now that you've begun constructing a new quantum personality, one that's rooted in future identity rather than past memory, you're ready for one of the most clarifying truths in the quantum framework. Reality is a mirror, not an objective stage, not a neutral playground, but a feedback system. It doesn't show you what's true. It shows you what you're transmitting. That means your external world is never out of sync with your internal broadcast, even when it feels unfair, random, or chaotic. Life isn't doing anything to you. It's mirroring from you. And when you grasp this, everything becomes data. You stop arguing with outcomes. You stop trying to force results. You start reading reality like a diagnostic screen. You begin to ask, what is life reflecting back to me right now? What belief, emotion, or pattern is being played out in front of me? What signal am I sending that would generate this experience? This isn't about blame. It's about visibility. Because once you treat reality as a mirror, you gain access to a superpower. Instant feedback. You no longer need to wonder what frequency you're broadcasting. You can just look around. Are you constantly met with resistance, delays, confusion, emotional disconnection? That's not proof you're cursed. That's confirmation your signal is off. And the moment you correct the signal, even slightly, the mirror adjusts. This is why two people can walk into the same room and experience completely different realities. One is broadcasting openness, trust, curiosity. The other is transmitting fear, shame, protection. Same room, different universe. Because the mirror only reflects what you radiate, not what you hope. And most people are confused because they've never learned how to read the reflection properly. They take it personally. They blame others. They try harder without adjusting the signal. But here's the truth. If the mirror is foggy, it's not broken. It's just matching a foggy frequency. So instead of fixing the outside, you go inward. You clean the mirror by cleaning your signal. And you do that by asking one powerful question throughout your day. Is what I'm experiencing right now something I want more of? If yes, amplify it. Anchor it. Notice what version of you created it. If no, interrupt it. Adjust your thoughts. Shift your posture. Switch your breath. Speak a new instruction. Reality won't argue. It will simply mirror the new state. And the more often you use the mirror this way, the faster you evolve. Because now, life isn't something you navigate. It's something you monitor and recalibrate through awareness. You stop spiraling into overreaction. You stop panicking when things don't go your way. You start using contrast as a compass. That's how you collapse better timelines faster. You no longer wait for change. You notice what needs changing in you and respond with precision. Because now the mirror is not your enemy. It's your feedback loop. It's not punishing you. It's reporting on you. And when you use that report wisely, you stop being confused by outcomes. You see clearly. You adjust quickly. You evolve rapidly. Next, we'll look at how this feedback loop doesn't just affect your circumstances, it affects your body itself. And why real healing can only happen when your quantum signal starts speaking a different language to your cells. You've begun to understand that life is a mirror, constantly reflecting your dominant frequency. That mirror includes your relationships, your finances, your opportunities. But there's one reflection even more intimate than all the rest. Your body. And here's the truth most never hear. Your body doesn't just respond to biology. It responds to the field. In other words, healing doesn't start with fixing the body. It starts with changing the signal the body is receiving. Let that sink in. Because the moment you realize this, you stop chasing symptoms. You stop assuming the issue is physical just because it's showing up in your physiology. You begin to ask a deeper question. What frequency is my body listening to? And how long has it been listening? This changes everything. Because your body is a biological antenna. Picks up your thoughts. It absorbs your emotions. It reacts to the electromagnetic charge of your beliefs, whether spoken or not. That means your body is constantly collapsing the energy you broadcast into physical outcomes. Pain, fatigue, tension, inflammation, or the opposite, vitality, ease, recovery, lightness. And this is not mystical. It's measurable. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology show how emotional states can suppress or strengthen the immune system. Stress alters hormonal chemistry. Resentment locks muscles. Shame affects heart rhythm. And coherent emotional states, like gratitude, love, trust, create measurable improvements in heart rate variability and cellular regeneration. But here's what makes it quantum. It's not just that feelings affect your health. It's that your field sets the baseline for what your body considers normal. So if your energy has been looping on fear, control, or despair for years, your body adapts. It turns chronic dysregulation into standard operating procedure. And once the body believes that's the norm, it adjusts its chemical environment to match. That's why change feels hard. Because your body isn't fighting you. It's trying to protect the system it's been trained to serve. So how do you rewire that loyalty? You begin changing the instructions at the level of the field, not just the behavior. Because when your frequency changes, the cells get new data. Your organs respond. Your hormones recalibrate. Your brain chemistry adjusts to the new signal. And healing starts to become natural, not because you forced it, but because the signal allowed it. This is why some people heal spontaneously. They didn't just try hard to get better. They shifted their state so completely that the field no longer supported the old pattern, and the body followed. Let's make this real. If you've been dealing with chronic tension, and your dominant emotional broadcast is, "I'm not safe," your body will interpret that signal and reflect it through the nervous system. Muscles stay tight, breath stays shallow, digestion slows, immune function drops. Now imagine shifting that frequency. You enter deep coherence. You start your day in emotional safety. You reduce reactivity. You increase internal trust. Suddenly, your field starts whispering to your body, "We're safe now," and your body, loyal as ever, starts obeying. It doesn't ask if you deserve it. It responds to the signal. That's how deep healing begins. You override the biology not by ignoring it, but by instructing it differently from the level of energy. And the more consistently you do this, the more your body stops rehearsing the trauma and starts reinforcing the transformation. That's not a miracle. That's frequency intelligence. It means you stop chasing surface-level fixes. You start tuning your signal like your life depends on it, because it does. And the next time your body flares up, you ask, "What is this showing me about my field? What am I rehearsing energetically that needs to be released?" You stop judging the symptom. You start adjusting the broadcast. This puts you back in creative power. Because your healing no longer depends on external control, it begins with internal coherence. And the more honest you are with your signal, the faster your biology listens. Next, we'll take that honesty even further and reveal how to read your energy in real time. Because while you can say all the right words, your field always tells the truth. You've seen how your body responds to your field, not just your fitness plan or diet or medication. Your energy is the blueprint, and your biology follows its instructions. Now it's time to go even deeper, because sometimes the beliefs you think you hold aren't the ones your energy is broadcasting. Your mind can lie, your mouth can lie, but your energy never does. This is the core truth. What you energetically broadcast is what the field believes you are. And what the field believes you are is what you keep experiencing. So if you say, "I'm abundant," but your frequency is tight, desperate, and clenched, the field mirrors scarcity. If you say, "I'm confident," but your tone is timid, your breath is shallow, and your presence is withdrawn, the field mirrors uncertainty. This is why so many people feel stuck even while doing everything right. They're saying the right affirmations. They're doing the vision boards. They're making the to-do lists, but their energy is leaking doubt, fear, control, and contradiction, and the field responds to that. So how do you catch it? You stop asking what you believe and start observing how you feel when no one is watching. Because belief is not mental. It's vibrational. Your body tells the truth first. Here's how to listen. When you state an intention, pay attention to your gut. Is there contraction, tension, a slight flinch? That's your field disagreeing with your words. That's your real broadcast. You say, "I'm worthy of love," but your body withdraws. You say, "I'm ready for success," but your chest tightens. That tension is the residue of old instruction, and it's what the quantum field picks up on first. So the goal isn't to change your words. It's to recalibrate your signal until your body agrees. That's coherence. You align the brain, the heart, and the field until there's no internal protest. Here's how to do it practically. Start with microchecks. Before any major decision, pause and scan your body. Ask, what is my energy saying that I'm not saying out loud? Your energy might reveal resistance to that opportunity you thought you wanted. It might uncover fear behind that bold decision. It might tell you you're not aligned, even when your ego says you are. That's not weakness. That's precision. And the more you check your energy before speaking, acting, or choosing, the more accurate your external world becomes. Because you're no longer emitting confusion. You're living as a clear signal. And that's when the field begins to shift. Not just sometimes, but consistently. Because now your results match your real identity, not your aspirational one. This is the secret to quantum congruence. You become the version of you who doesn't have to say, I'm confident, because your frequency says it first. You don't have to force opportunities. They arise in resonance with your clean signal. And anytime something misaligns, you don't panic, you recalibrate. Because now you trust the field. And more importantly, the field trusts you. Next, we'll show you how to build on this clean signal, not just in moments of intensity, but as a daily lifestyle that sustains transformation through consistency, not effort. By now, you've seen how energy never lies. You've learned how to read your frequency, not by what you say, but by how your body feels, how your field responds, and what life mirrors back to you. But here's the challenge. A high-frequency moment is easy. Sustaining it is the mastery. Because anyone can meditate once. Anyone can feel aligned after a breakthrough session. Anyone can experience temporary coherence. But temporary coherence creates temporary results. And your field doesn't respond to what you do occasionally, it responds to what you broadcast consistently. This is where ritual becomes resonance. Rituals are the doorway. They get you in. They shift your state. They crack open the possibility. But resonance is what holds it. Resonance is what keeps your signal coherent not for minutes, but for hours, days, eventually a lifetime. So how do you make the leap? You stop treating frequency work as a separate task. You integrate it into how you live. This isn't about becoming obsessed. It's about becoming stable. Because if your frequency is easily shaken by small inconveniences, unplanned events, or external triggers, then you're not broadcasting from power. You're broadcasting from fragility, and the field reflects that instability. One day things flow, the next you spiral. One moment you're clear, the next you're reacting. That's not a character flaw. That's a signal management issue, and it can be solved. Here's the shift. You stop focusing on fixing every individual thought or emotion. You start cultivating a resonant environment, internally and externally, that reinforces your chosen frequency. Let's break this down. Resonance is the energetic afterglow of alignment. It's what your field continues to emit, even when you're not actively trying to hold it. To build that, you must install anchor points throughout your day, structures that keep you aligned without you needing to constantly think about it. Here's what that looks like. 1. Morning frequency lock. Not just meditation, but instructional broadcast. You don't just get calm, you activate the identity you want to live from. 2. Midday checkpoint. Every few hours, pause. Ask, am I still broadcasting from the version of me that matches the reality I want? If not, recalibrate on the spot. 3. Environmental echo. Your space holds frequency. Music, light, words, screens. All of it either stabilizes your field or distorts it. Cure it consciously. 4. Emotional hygiene. Don't just feel better. Feel differently. Practice new emotional states until your nervous system treats them as the baseline. 5. Nightly signal reset. Don't go to sleep in chaos. Realign your frequency before bed so your subconscious carries the cleanest signal into dream state integration. When these practices become part of your way of being, something magical happens. You stop crashing. You stop starting over. You stop needing dramatic resets. You begin to embody a field that holds itself. And in that stability, manifestation speeds up. Synchronicities increase. Physical healing deepens. Emotional resilience becomes automatic. You don't stay high frequency because life is easy. You stay high frequency because you've trained your field to default to power, not collapse. This is the real benefit of resonance. You become harder to knock out of alignment. You don't break down as easily. You recover faster. You regulate without needing external validation. And from that space, quantum change is no longer just possible, it's predictable. Next, we'll unlock the full potential of this stability by showing you that you are not one fixed identity, but a multidimensional being. And how to choose the version of yourself that lives in the reality you've been calling in. Now that you've stabilized your resonance, not as a moment but as a lifestyle, you're ready for one of the most powerful truths in this entire quantum journey. You are not one self. You are a superposition. In quantum physics, a particle exists in multiple states simultaneously, until it is observed. Only then does it collapse into a single outcome. You work the same way. Right now, infinite versions of you exist in potential. The confident one, the fearful one, the wealthy one, the struggling one, the healed one, the hurting one. And every moment, your field selects which version collapses into physical reality, based on observation, emotion, behavior, and frequency. This is not philosophy. This is functionality. You are a wave of potential until you act like a particular version. Then that version solidifies, temporarily, and begins generating your experience. But here's the mistake most people make. They assume the version that shows up first is the one that's real. So if they feel anxious, they say, "This is just who I am today." If they feel stuck, they say, "This is my truth." No, that's not your truth. That's just your current collapse. And collapse can be reselect. The superposition self doesn't ask, "Who am I today?" It asks, "Which version of me am I going to embody on purpose, regardless of how I feel?" This gives you immense power, because you're no longer a victim of your mood, your thoughts, or your history. You're a curator of identity, and each identity broadcasts a different frequency, and each frequency collapses a different reality. So if you want new outcomes, you stop waiting for your circumstances to shift. You select a new version of you before anything changes externally. Let's make this practical. You want to step into abundance? You don't wait to feel abundant. You start behaving like someone who already is. You don't force positivity. You adopt patterns, decisions, language, rhythms that match the version of you who already has overflow coded into their field. And your reality begins adjusting accordingly. It's not faking. It's selecting. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're choosing from within the infinite potential of who you already are. Because the version of you who lives the life you want, they're not somewhere else. They're already in the wave, waiting for selection. And once you select them often enough through action, breath, focus, movement, they become the default collapse. That's when you look back and say, "I don't recognize the old me anymore." Not because you erased them, but because you stopped choosing them. That's how transformation sticks. Not by fixing the past, but by becoming too aligned with the future to keep collapsing the old version. You stop asking for change. You become the change. And every time your energy slips, every time old patterns try to reassert themselves, you remind yourself, "I'm a wave. I choose the form. I'm not stuck. I'm selecting. I'm not limited. I'm collapsing timelines with every signal I send." This is quantum authorship. And once you claim it, nothing and no one can keep you collapsed in a version of yourself that you no longer resonate with. Next, we'll uncover the language of synchronicity and why it's not just a cool coincidence, but a direct confirmation from the field that you're on the right timeline. You've now learned to embody the version of yourself that matches the reality you desire. You understand the collapse of identity, the power of selection, and the stability of resonance. But what happens when the field starts talking back? It doesn't use words. It doesn't send confirmation in the form of logic. It sends you synchronicity. Most ignore it. Some call it coincidence. Others call it luck. But once you understand the mechanics of the field, you'll see it for what it truly is. A signal. Not random. Not accidental. Not cute. Precision feedback from the quantum system you are actively shaping. Here's how it works. When your internal signal stabilizes around a new frequency, when your thoughts, emotions, and actions align into coherence, the field begins to reorganize. And the first signs of that reorganization aren't always full manifestations. They're signals, little flickers of confirmation, a conversation you needed to hear, an opportunity that seemed impossible. A number that shows up again and again. A person who enters your life exactly when the next version of you is ready. These aren't Easter eggs. They're echoes of alignment. They mean your field is beginning to bend. They mean reality has picked up the signal and is now responding with real-time data. And the more frequently it happens, the more you know. You're in sync. Your energy is no longer fighting your future. It's matching it. But here's what most miss. Synchronicities aren't just there to excite you. They're there to guide you. Because when you treat synchronicities as breadcrumbs, they lead you. They pull you closer to the version of reality that already exists in the wave, the one that's trying to collapse into form. So here's the protocol. When synchronicity strikes, don't just smile and scroll past it. Ask, what was I feeling right before this showed up? What frequency was I broadcasting? What decision did I just make that aligns with my future? This turns synchronicity into a teaching tool. It's not random reward. It's feedback, showing you the pattern of behavior that generates resonance with your next timeline. It's the field's way of saying, yes, more of that. So don't miss the instruction hidden in the confirmation. Because once you learn to speak that language, the language of aligned events, meaningful connections, perfect timing, you don't just walk your path. You co-author it. You start moving with less resistance and more flow. You start feeling guided, not guessing. You stop asking, is this working? Because life is speaking in real time. And the more you honor synchronicity with attention and action, the more it increases. Because energy flows where attention goes. And if your attention goes to resonance, your life begins to bloom with confirmation. But here's where most sabotage this process. They notice synchronicity, then stop trusting it. They explain it away. They retreat into logic. They wait for certainty. And the field says, you weren't ready, because synchronicity only builds momentum when followed. So when the signal appears, move. Say yes. Send the message. Take the risk. Honor the alignment. That moment is a doorway. The more doors you walk through, the more quickly the old reality dissolves, and the more magnetic the new timeline becomes. But this guidance gets even more profound. Because once synchronicity becomes regular, something else is revealed. Something most people never even suspect. You are not just getting feedback from the field. You are the field. And that truth is what we will unlock next. You've started to notice the field responding. Synchronicities are no longer occasional. They're rhythmic, specific, intelligent. And you've begun asking a deeper question. Who's really sending the signal? Is it me? Is it the universe? Is it a co-creation? Let's remove the last veil. There is no separation. There is no you and the field. There is no sender and receiver. There is only one system appearing as two perspectives. You are not sending signals to the field. You are the field signaling itself. This may sound abstract, but it's the most grounded, empowering realization you can ever embody. Because once you drop the illusion of separation, everything changes. There's no longer a need to manipulate, manifest, or even attract. There's only alignment and recognition. You're no longer trying to make something happen. You're waking up to what's already happening and aligning with the part of you that knows. Let's simplify this. Your thoughts, field activity. Your emotions, field resonance. Your sensations, field feedback. Your body, a node of intelligence in a field of consciousness. There's nothing outside of you giving you a sign. There's only you in various expressions showing yourself where the signal is strong. The future you want doesn't exist somewhere else. It exists in a version of the field you haven't tuned into yet. That tuning isn't passive. It's deeply intentional. It means dissolving the belief that the universe is doing something to you. It's not. It is you. You're the creator and the creation. You're the player and the code. You're the signal and the response. So now the game isn't about convincing the field to help you. It's about collapsing the illusion that it ever needed convincing. Because when you act from unity, you act from unmatched clarity. You stop asking for permission. You stop outsourcing your power. You stop bargaining with outcomes. And instead of trying to predict life, you begin to feel it unfold from within you, because it's never been separate. That's why some people move faster. Not because they're smarter or luckier, because they remember who they are. They're not trying to change the field. They're acting as it. And that makes their signal irresistible. It doesn't mean their lives are perfect. It means their coherence is constant. They don't panic when circumstances shift. They don't collapse when outcomes delay. They don't spiral when tension arises. Because their identity isn't rooted in form. It's rooted in frequency unity. And when you start living this way, the noise of separation fades. You stop saying, I'm trying to manifest. You start saying, I'm tuning. You stop asking, when will it happen? You start asking, where am I broadcasting from right now? And the moment your broadcast aligns with the version of you who knows, not hopes but knows, that version is selected. Not because something was granted, because the mirror had no choice. It simply reflected your wholeness. This is why quantum change isn't about doing more. It's about remembering faster. The field has never been outside of you. The universe is not a vending machine. You're not making requests. You're issuing instructions through your being, not just your words. And the field, always loyal, simply reflects the one truth you were born to reclaim. You are not in the field. You are it. Next, we'll explore how even your smallest decisions, when made from this unified identity, can ripple across timelines, creating change far greater than the choice itself. Now that you've seen it clearly that you are the field, the game changes completely. Because if you are not just influencing the quantum system but being it, then every movement of your awareness, intention, and choice carries weight. You're not pushing energy around like a visitor. You're shaping it from the inside, like a creator. And that brings us to a misunderstood superpower: your decisions. Most people believe decisions must be dramatic to be meaningful. Big moves, life overhauls, shocking pivots. But the field doesn't work that way. In the quantum model, small decisions, when made from high alignment, create disproportionate ripples through your timeline. Not because the decision is grand, because the frequency is clean. Let's break this open. You're at a moment of choice. Do you send the message or stay silent? Do you say yes or no? Do you trust the next step or spiral back into planning? These seem minor on the surface, but the field isn't listening to scale. It's listening to signal integrity. And if your decision, no matter how small, is made from clarity, congruence, and present moment alignment, the field begins shifting instantly. A ripple begins that touches everything. Because when you say yes from the new self, it reinforces the new identity. When you say no from self-respect, it collapses the old loop of people-pleasing. When you take a small action based on inner knowing, not outer validation, the timeline reshapes. And this is where quantum living becomes exponential. You realize you don't need to control the future. You only need to choose cleanly in the now. Each moment becomes a node, a point of potential. And each choice is a thread. Which version of you is threading this reality together? That's the real question. And the answer is never found in drama or delay. It's found in presence. This is why the old you kept looping. Because decisions were made from fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being seen. Fear of being left behind. Those decisions carried weight too, but the ripple was toward contraction, not expansion. So the timeline stayed tight, small, repetitive. Now something else is happening. You've trained your awareness. You've aligned your body. You've recalibrated your identity. Now your choices don't just create consequences, they generate reality. And the field listens fast. The more consistently you choose from the new version of you, the more momentum you build. That's how people experience rapid shifts. They aren't working harder. They're choosing more accurately again and again. They stop negotiating with the old self. They stop needing external proof. And every micro-choice becomes a reinforcement. This is who I am now. This is the version I live from. This is the frequency I refuse to collapse. And the quantum system, in its perfect responsiveness, says, understood, updating reality accordingly. You've likely already felt this. You said no to a pattern and within hours, an opening appeared. You made a decision from clarity and everything felt lighter. You walked away from the familiar and alignment surged. This isn't magic. This is physics. Clean choices create clear timelines. And the field reflects you with elegance and speed. So if your life feels static, ask, where am I still choosing from the old script? Which decisions am I avoiding because they feel too small to matter? They matter. Everything you don't choose, chooses for you. So choose with authority. No more delay. No more waiting for permission. No more pretending you don't know. You know, And every time you act from that knowing, even in the tiniest ways, you accelerate the collapse of the future you've already claimed. Next, we'll look at what happens when your decisions trigger resistance. Not from the field, but from the past, and how to stay aligned when everything old tries to pull you back in. You've made the shift. You're no longer asking whether your frequency matters. You know that even your smallest choices reshape timelines. But then something strange happens. You've chosen the new version of yourself. You're making aligned decisions. You're broadcasting a cleaner signal. And suddenly, everything from the past shows up louder. Old patterns resurface. Old doubts creep back. Old people call. Old habits reawaken. It feels like regression. It's not. It's exposure. What you're feeling is the gravitational pull of the past. A force that activates right when you're expanding beyond it. Because the old self isn't just an idea. It's a fully formed identity structure with patterns, preferences, and attachments. And when you begin choosing beyond it, it doesn't vanish quietly. It fights for survival. That's why, after a breakthrough, many feel an emotional ambush. Not because they failed, but because the old is trying to reassert itself. Why? Because familiarity feels like safety to the nervous system. Even toxic loops, when rehearsed long enough, feel like home. So when you exit them, your biology doesn't say, "Great job." It says, "What the hell are we doing?" You'll get thoughts like, "This is too fast. What if this doesn't work? I'm not sure I can hold this." Don't mistake those thoughts for truth. They're echoes. They're scripts. They're artifacts of a signal you no longer need to protect. Here's how to beat the pull. 1. Expect it. The past gets loud right before it dissolves. That's the rule, not the exception. 2. Identify the pattern. Which version of you is being reactivated? The insecure one? The martyr? The controller? Call it out. 3. Stay in the room. Don't abandon your new frequency. Sit in the discomfort without collapsing into the old behavior. 4. Re-anchor your now self. Speak it. Breathe it. Move like the version of you that made the upgrade, not the one trying to crawl back. 5. Act fast. Make a new choice. Rewire through behavior. Frequency shifts when action confirms alignment. Remember, the past only has power when you hesitate. Hesitation opens the door for old identities to step back in and negotiate. And negotiation is a signal of uncertainty. So close the loop. You've already made the decision. Now act like it. When you feel the pull back into the old, slow your breath. Drop your shoulders. Name the old script and release it. Then ask, what would my new self do right now? And do that. It doesn't have to feel heroic. It just has to be consistent. Every time you override the past, the pull gets weaker. The voice gets quieter. The pattern loses charge. Until one day you look back at what used to keep you stuck. And it doesn't even register. Because you didn't fight it. You outgrew it. The field doesn't need you to destroy the past. It needs you to ignore its invitation. And once you stop RSVPing to old timelines, they stop showing up. Next, we'll expand this understanding to your external world, because sometimes it's not your past that pulls you back, but the beliefs of others who are still stuck in theirs. You've learned to override the past. You've watched old patterns try to claw their way back in, and you've chosen not to collapse. But there's another form of gravity few ever see coming. It's not internal. It's relational. The belief systems of others can anchor you in timelines you've already outgrown, if you're not paying attention. This is social gravity, the pull of expectation, the magnetic weight of familiar roles, the energetic contracts you've signed, often without realizing. And here's the truth. Even if you've upgraded your field, the fields around you may not have. Your family may still believe in scarcity. Your friends may still orbit around drama. Your partner may still expect the version of you that always said yes and never enforced boundaries. And every time you interact with them, you're not just exchanging words, you're exchanging frequency. That means if you're not rooted in your new identity, you'll unconsciously recalibrate to their expectations. This isn't personal. It's quantum. When two frequencies meet, the more stable one dominates. And if you're still stabilizing your new broadcast, Someone else's old story can feel more true, simply because it's louder, older, or more familiar. Here's how to spot it. You're feeling clear, grounded, aligned. Then a text comes in. Comment is made. Pattern is reactivated. And suddenly, you shrink. You question. You feel obligated to explain. You shift your tone, your posture, your frequency to match a version of you that no longer exists. That's not a regression. That's a frequency override. And it happens fast when you're still unconsciously bonded to other people's timelines. To break free, you must identify the roles you've been rewarded for. Were you the fixer, the quiet one, the achiever, the martyr, the peacemaker? Each of those comes with an energetic price tag. Stay in this identity or lose connection. But that's the trap. You're not breaking connection, you're breaking codependency. And that distinction matters. Because the more you stay bonded to old identities for the sake of belonging, the more you delay your next timeline. So here's the new instruction. No longer collapse to match someone else's outdated view of you. Not to be liked. Not to be safe. Not to keep the peace. The peace you're keeping is often a prison. And the field is waiting for you to step beyond it. Let's make it tactical. When you're around people who still relate to your old self, hold your frequency in silence. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to remain stable. Use internal cues. Notice if your breath shortens, if your voice shifts, if you feel the need to explain. That's a signal you're adapting, not aligning. Set energetic boundaries before interaction. Declare, I remain fully present in the frequency of my new self, regardless of anyone else's field. Recalibrate after exposure. If you get knocked off center, don't shame yourself. Recover, breathe, re-anchor, return to signal. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting the energetic cords that keep you playing small for their comfort. Because your elevation isn't just about you. When you hold your new frequency long enough, it becomes a mirror that invites others to rise, not demands it. You don't change people. You change your response. You hold the line. And when your coherence becomes unshakable, their old gravity can't pull you back. Next, we'll activate the most powerful refinement tool in your quantum arsenal. The ability to collapse entire realities not by force, but by making one powerful choice. Now, you've seen how others' beliefs can become invisible chains. How their frequency, if stronger, can override yours. Now, you're ready to take back the steering wheel with surgical clarity. Not with more affirmations, not with more effort, but with one syllable most never used consciously enough. No, this word isn't rejection. It's redirection. It's not resistance. It's refinement. Every time you say no, you're collapsing a timeline. Let's be clear. Saying no in the quantum sense isn't about negativity or avoidance. It's about removing energetic investment from a version of reality you no longer wish to experience. And when you withdraw investment, the collapse is instant, because the field isn't sentimental. It's obedient. It doesn't keep timelines active unless your frequency feeds them. So when you say no to the client, the relationship, the job, the habit, the thought, you're not just creating space. You're issuing a command. This is no longer part of my construct. And the field says, understood, collapsing now. Most people don't use no this way. They use it as reaction, or they avoid it entirely, out of guilt, fear, or conditioning. But when used from alignment, no becomes one of the most powerful tools in your arsenal. It ends energetic contracts. It seals quantum leaks. Carves clarity into confusion. Let's make it visible. You're presented with an opportunity that looks good, but feels heavy. You hesitate. You say yes out of obligation. Now what? You've split your signal. You've reinforced a version of yourself that betrays your truth. But when you say no, clean, direct, without apology, you realign your field with the identity you've chosen. You send a message. I only entertain what matches my highest frequency. And the field reconfigures instantly. Why? Because no removes energy from what's not aligned. And energy is the only thing keeping misaligned realities alive. Every day you're being asked, Will you collapse the timelines that dilute your signal? Will you stop feeding what's draining you? Will you trust that saying no won't leave you with less, but unlock something greater? Because here's the paradox. No is what makes room for yes. Yes to what you really want. Yes to the opportunity that matches your new self. Yes to the relationship, the timing, the timeline that only appears once you're no longer broadcasting confusion. So say it with precision. Say no to the outdated version of you who tolerates less. The identity that plays small for approval. The rhythm that rushes out of fear. The pattern that performs to stay safe. Every time you do, a false version of your life collapses, and your future gets lighter. But don't expect applause. Some people will resist your no, because it threatens their control, their expectations, or their own denial. That's okay. You don't owe anyone alignment at your expense. You owe your field one thing: clarity. And clarity often sounds like this. No. That version of me doesn't exist anymore. No. I no longer collapse for comfort. No. I trust what I've calibrated toward. That is quantum discipline. And when you practice it consistently, your signal becomes unmistakable. The field doesn't have to guess. It knows what to bring. It knows what to close. It knows where you live now energetically. Next, you'll learn how to take this precision even further. By navigating timelines not just through emotion or intuition, but through conscious travel across possibility itself. You've now mastered the collapse of misaligned realities. You've seen how the power of a clean, unapologetic no can instantly dissolve timelines that no longer serve you. So what's next? If timelines can be ended, they can also be chosen. You are not here to react to the timeline that appears. You're here to navigate across them. You're not bound to one future. You're standing in a multiverse, a grid of possibilities all accessible through frequency and choice. This isn't fiction. This is function. And once you understand how to shift timelines consciously, you stop chasing outcomes and start selecting realities. Let's get specific. Every timeline has a frequency signature, and every version of you, confident, sick, abundant, stuck, healed, overwhelmed, expanded, exists on that timeline. So the question is no longer, how do I create the reality I want? The real question is, how do I become the version of me who already lives in it? That version already exists. The timeline already exists. You just haven't been tuning your signal to match it until now. Here's how to begin timeline travel consciously and deliberately. Step 1. Identify the outcome. Not just what you want, but what version of you naturally attracts that outcome. How do they speak? What do they tolerate? What do they refuse to entertain? How do they walk through uncertainty? Get clear. Step 2. Shift your posture. You don't need a time machine. You need alignment. Stand, breathe, and move as if you've already arrived. Because your body is the tuning fork. If you don't feel it yet, keep adjusting, the resonance will lock in. Step 3. Lock the frequency through behavior. Don't just feel like that version of you, act like them. Say what they'd say. Decline what they'd decline. Choose like they'd choose. Without needing proof it will work. That action is the bridge. Step 4. Collapse the gap. This is where most hesitate. They see the future they want, but bring the past self along for the ride. That doesn't work. You don't carry the old version of you into the new timeline. You choose one and let the other dissolve. That means no waiting to feel ready, no explaining your shift, no emotional negotiation with old patterns. You select, you stabilize, you align, and reality shifts. It doesn't need months. It needs clarity, because time, in the quantum sense, is not a distance. It's a permission structure. When you give yourself full permission to shift into the version of you that matches the timeline you desire, that becomes your present moment reality. And every time you override doubt, spiral, or delay, you reinforce your new timeline. You're no longer a passive character. You're a navigator. You're choosing based on coherence, not circumstances. You're responding to internal guidance, not external proof. You stop looking for signs, because your actions become the signal. You stop hoping it will work, because you're walking the path of the one for whom it already has. This is not pretending. This is selective embodiment. And the more often you do it, the more your field responds with acceleration, opportunity, and precision. Next, we'll explore what happens when that signal becomes so strong that the future you desire no longer waits to appear, because you become the signal itself. You've learned how to shift timelines. You understand the process. Identify, align, behave, and collapse the gap. But there's a deeper layer most never reach. It's not just about choosing timelines. It's about becoming the living broadcast of the one you want, so purely, so powerfully, so undeniably, that reality doesn't catch up to you. It meets you. This is embodiment, not as a mindset, not as an affirmation, but as a biological frequency state. This is when the future no longer feels like something you're calling in. It feels like who you are now, and the world can't help but respond. Here's how it works. Your body is your transmitter. Your behavior is your amplifier. Your field is your messenger. So when your nervous system feels safe holding the frequency of your future, even when nothing in the external confirms it, that's when embodiment begins. You don't wait for results to prove who you are. You carry the signal before results arrive. You speak with the cadence of clarity. You move with the ease of certainty. You show up as if everything you've declared has already been confirmed. Not because you're delusional, but because your frequency has already selected it. The field doesn't respond to need. It responds to coherence. And when your whole being agrees, mind, body, emotions, environment, habits, speech, decisions, then reality has only one instruction: mirror this. This is why people start getting lucky. They're not lucky, they're embodied. The signal is clean. The identity is stable. The field aligns accordingly. But embodiment also brings responsibility. Because once you are the signal, there's no room left for contradiction. You can't say you're aligned and keep reacting from fear. You can't claim expansion and keep behaving like someone who doesn't trust it. You can't affirm the future and keep investing in thoughts that cancel it out. Every move either reinforces the signal or scrambles it. This is why most stay stuck at the edge of transformation. They want the future, but they're afraid to become the version of themselves who already lives it. Because that version doesn't negotiate. That version doesn't explain their standards. That version doesn't tolerate timelines where their signal is diluted. So the question is no longer, how do I get there? It's, am I willing to become the one who's already there now? Embodying the future means collapsing every version of you that still doubts, explains, hesitates, or shrinks. It means walking into each day like your reality has no choice but to match you, because you've already become the match. It doesn't mean arrogance. It means neutrality, clarity, command without drama. You show up as the future, and the world adjusts itself accordingly. And the more often you do this, the less effort it takes. Why? Because your field starts to hold the signal for you. It becomes your new baseline. You wake up in it. You breathe in it. You lead from it. You create from it. That's when time collapses. That's when delays vanish. That's when trying ends. Because when you become the signal, you stop being the seeker, and you start being the source. And that's not the end. Next, you'll learn how to integrate all of this without needing to blow up your life or start over. Because quantum transformation doesn't require destruction. It requires a conscious reboot from the inside out. You've become the signal. You've walked the path of conscious embodiment. You've stopped waiting for the future to arrive because now you are the arrival. But for many, a question still lingers. Do I need to destroy everything to truly change? Do I need to burn it all down, the job, the relationship, the location, to live this new timeline? The answer is both simple and freeing. No, you don't need to abandon your life to reinvent yourself. You need to reboot the field from within it. Quantum transformation isn't about demolition. It's about recoding your signal so powerfully that your current life either upgrades to match, or becomes irrelevant by default. Let's be clear. Rebooting doesn't mean running from your old world. It means stopping the energetic rehearsal that keeps it alive. You're not escaping. You're recalibrating. You're ending the internal subscription to versions of you that no longer exist. And here's the paradox. When you reboot from signal, not strategy, your world often changes without needing to be destroyed. The relationship either deepens or dissolves. The job either elevates or exits. The money either multiplies or moves. And all of it happens as a reflection of your inner reorganization. Because when your signal changes, your surroundings receive new instructions. And if they don't match, they fall away. Not by force, not through chaos, but through energetic misalignment. You don't need to fight for this. You need to hold coherence. Let's build the framework. Step 1. Acknowledge the remnants. What parts of your life were built by the old signal? Don't judge them. Don't rush them. Just name them. Visibility is power. Step 2. Stop feeding what doesn't resonate. You don't have to cut everything off, but you must stop collapsing into outdated dynamics. Energy first, action second. Step 3. Set new signal standards. This version of you has boundaries. It has frequency codes. It doesn't tolerate timelines soaked in doubt, delay, or distortion. Make those standards non-negotiable, not out of rigidity but out of clarity. Step 4. Let the world respond. Don't rush the recalibration. People, patterns, opportunities, they'll either rise to match you or exit because they can't. You don't control that. You receive it. You respond to it from stability. This is the quantum reboot. You don't start from scratch. You start from signal. You stop hauling your old identity into every room. You stop trying to be seen. You begin to be felt. And the world doesn't need an explanation. It senses the update. It moves around you differently. It begins to reflect not just your goals but your embodiment. This is how real transformation sustains. Not by walking away from your life, but by walking into it as someone undeniably new. And if you hold that long enough, your environment morphs or it's replaced. Either way, you win. Because you didn't collapse the external. You collapsed the illusion that it defined you. The power you thought was in the job, the title, the partner, the approval. You now realize it was always you, and the version of you who lives from that truth. They don't rebuild from effort. They reboot from presence. Next, we complete this journey not with a conclusion but with a return. To the only place where transformation has ever truly occurred. The infinite now. You've rebooted. You've released the old frameworks. You've stopped chasing change as something out there. Now it's time to return, not to the past, not to the future, but to the most potent access point in the quantum system, the now. Because here's the ultimate truth that we've been building toward. The now isn't just a moment. It's a command center. It's not a passive space where things happen to you. It's the only place where you are fully creator. Every identity you've worn, chosen in the now. Every pattern repeated or broken, selected in the now. Every version of reality you've experienced, collapsed through the now. And once you live from this awareness, your power becomes immediate, because you stop waiting. No more waiting for clarity. No more waiting for healing. No more waiting for the next step. The now is the step. You stop saying, someday I'll be confident. Soon I'll be abundant. Eventually I'll feel free. No, you collapse into it now by broadcasting it before it arrives. Because here's what the quantum field already knows. Reality is responding only to who you are being right now. And right now is the only frequency that creates. Everything else is delay. So the question is not, what should I do next? The question is, what am I being right now that either builds or blocks the life I've already chosen? Because if your being is scattered, the signal is scrambled. If your being is hesitant, the timeline wobbles. If your being is clear, congruent, coherent, then the timeline can't resist you. It magnetizes. The more you commit to the now, not just as presence but as agency, the more the field reflects back a version of reality that feels like destiny. But it's not destiny. It's design. your design. You crafted it not by force, but by choosing, moment after moment, to return to the only place where your power has ever truly lived. Not in the memory, not in the desire, in the now. And here's where your evolution completes its arc. You stop being a person working toward alignment. You become alignment in motion. You stop being someone pursuing wholeness. You become the signal of wholeness, and the world organizes accordingly. This is mastery, not perfection, not performance. Just full ownership of the fact that everything you need to shift timelines, reshape outcomes, and rewrite the story is already coded into this present moment. Every breath, every step, every word, every thought, all of it is creative material. So use it. Use it not to hustle for the future, but to live the frequency of your future now. This is what it means to live quantum, not to think about potential, but to be the portal through which potential becomes form. And as you walk forward from here, you don't need to remember every teaching. Just this: the now is the signal. The signal is the creator. You are both. So go be it, fully, powerfully, unshakably, because you've never been waiting on the field. The field was waiting on you,